Our story begins with a young man who crossed into this world 17 years ago, awakening a trade extraction system that he hoped would lead him to the peak of life. Instead, he has spent his years as a starving dock laborer, carrying heavy crates all day just to earn a single bowl of watery kanji. That porridge is thinner than river water, clear enough to use as a mirror, and today, as it happens, is finally the day for a new trade extraction. The system informs him that the next draw is 2.5 hours away, while his currently equipped trait is developed deltoids. This white tier trait slightly increases his shoulder strength for hauling cargo, while hunger resistance helps reduce the constant discomfort of an empty stomach. He also possesses reduced pain sensitivity, a trait that makes things a bit more comfortable whenever he happens to get beaten up. His inventory is cluttered with unequipped white traits like pointy head, food guarding, and even loves eating eggs. To be honest, the system has two major flaws, a massive 1-year cooldown between draws and an incredibly low rate of success. The lowest level white traits make up 99% of the pool, severely polluting his chances of obtaining anything useful from martial cultivation. While increasing his realm would improve his odds, he lacks the natural talent required to even begin his cultivation journey. It seems he was stuck in a dead end right from the very start. When he gets into a scuffle, his pain reduction trait ensures he feels nothing, though the physical injuries remain quite real. With only 2.5 minutes left until the next draw, he pleads for just a bit of luck, knowing full well how low the probabilities are. But perhaps Murphy's Law might work in his favor for once as he reflects on the past 18 years of his life. He was born into a peasant family in Luoding village within Bayun County, and while they weren't wealthy, they were content. They had enough to eat and drink, which was decent for a feudal society, until everything changed 3 months ago. A mysterious group of attackers descended upon the village, slaughtering everyone and leaving absolutely nothing alive in their wake. He only survived thanks to a villager named Dachuan, who pulled him along as they jumped into the rushing waters of the Qing River. The current was violent, and as they struggled to stay afloat, they eventually exhausted their strength and lost consciousness as the water swept them away. They were carried downstream to Qingha County, where, by a stroke of luck, they were rescued by a local fisherman. The Blackstone gang supposedly saved them, and to show their gratitude for such mercy, they were told they would now be working off their debt. The terms were simple. They would be provided with exactly 1 meal per day. The contract was never clearly read, and the thumbprints were forcibly pressed onto the paper, but the Blackstone gang members insist they are just being hospitable. Sacks were thrown over their shoulders immediately, and just like that, he found himself with a very stable, if involuntary, job. For the next 3 months, he and Dachuan spent every waking hour hauling heavy sandbags at the Qingha County docks. As these memories drift by, the countdown for the trade extraction finally hits 0, and the system springs to life. A parchment scroll that only he can see appears before him, filled with countless floating points of light that look like a cluster of stars. These lights move in a chaotic, high-speed dance, and while the display is mostly white, a closer look reveals something more. We can see a few faint glimmers of green hidden within the swarm. Each point of light represents a trait, with the colors indicating their quality, and he desperately needs the luck of the gods right now. He prays for strength and presses down firmly. At this exact moment, the gears of fate finally begin to turn. A brand new trait emerges and drops into his palm, radiating a brilliant, 7-colored red light, so intense it feels as if it's burning through his eyelids. He has obtained a mythical tier trait, the simulator. As we can see, this changes everything. He now possesses a powerful cheat that allows him to intervene and influence the process of a life simulation. Furthermore, he can draw a new trait every single year within the simulation and inherit all of them once it concludes. Memories, cultivation realms, and secret techniques, all of it will be his. It is time to begin the simulation. Before crossing into this world, he was quite the fan of web novels and manga, so he is already very familiar with how these simulators work. Based on the description, he realizes that as long as he survives long enough in the simulation, his power will grow exponentially. This effectively gives him countless extra chances to draw traits, which, naturally, makes his odds of success much higher. With the simulator, escaping the Blackstone gang is no longer a dream. He might just be able to take them down entirely. As for the group that murdered his family, they should start preparing themselves, because he is coming to settle the score very soon. And with that, the simulation begins. It is time to see how this new life unfolds. The Luoding village massacre occurs. His home is destroyed, and his family perishes, forcing him to realize just how cruel this world can be. Thanks to Dachuan's quick thinking, he pulls our protagonist into the river to escape, leaving them both drifting away in a state of unconsciousness. They eventually drift into the territory of Qingha County, where they are picked up by the Blackstone gang and forced into hard labor at the docks. Under the constant lash of the Blackstone gang's whips, he and the other laborers live like the walking dead, with no hope for the future. In the first year, at 18 years old, the trade extraction begins, and it is a success. He obtains White Streak in the Waves, a white tier trait that grants him the swimming skills of a national-level athlete. The system asks if he wishes to adjust his traits. During the simulation, this option only appears once a year during the extraction phase. The simulation pauses, waiting for him to make a choice. He wonders if the first year even counts, and the answer, naturally, is yes. He decides he needs to equip this trait. Since he works by the river, being a master swimmer certainly couldn't hurt. He replaces Resist Evil with White Streak in the Waves. Realizing the simulation has truly started, he feels a sudden urge to do whatever he wants. However, his current strength is still far too low, so he suppresses his inner restlessness. He knows better than to be reckless. He must survive as long as possible in the simulation to draw more traits. Meanwhile, the overseers shout that there are still 3 ships to unload. If the work isn't finished, there will be no food for 3 days. The sound of the overseer's whip makes the other laborers tremble in fear. On the surface, he pretends to be afraid, but inside he is already calculating exactly how many ways he will kill these bastards once he is strong enough. Night falls, and just as he prepares to rest, he hears the voice of the foreman, Wang Chong, calling for 3 men. Wang Chong claims there is a special job with great benefits, but our protagonist doesn't believe a word of it and pretends to be asleep. The foreman isn't fooled, telling him to stop pretending since he saw him by the river just a moment ago. With a sigh of resignation, he realizes he's been spotted, so he has no choice but to get up and walk over. Otherwise, Wang Chong would surely give him a beating before forcing him to take this so-called dream job anyway. Wang Chong grins at the 3 laborers, telling them that at dawn, someone will take them 10 miles downstream to the Shirley Pavilion. Their task is to deliver a meal to the river god. In exchange, they can enjoy 3 days of luxury at the Red House. Yes, of course, he suspects they aren't delivering a meal, but are the meal themselves, and dead men, after all, have very little use for luxury houses. He recalls the old-timers mentioning a demon in the Qingha River that loves human flesh and stirs up violent storms whenever it's hungry. It used to capsize ships constantly, but since the Blackstone gang arrived, the storms have strangely settled down. The elders believe the gang struck a deal with the demon, offering a few lives every month to keep the waters calm for trade. Deep down, he curses his luck, knowing he is doomed if he stays. He decides his only chance is to escape in the dead of night. When the camp is finally silent and everyone is asleep, he takes a leap of faith into the dark, rushing waters of the river. The Qingha current is treacherous. In the past, he never would have tried this, as he surely would have been caught or drowned. But now, with the White Streak in the Waves trait, he has a fighting chance, and staying meant certain death by tomorrow anyway. He paddles with all his might, realizing his swimming skills have improved drastically. Reaching the opposite bank now seems entirely possible. He feels a momentary surge of hope for freedom, but the sound of splashing has already already alerted the Blackstone gang guards. Wang Chong snorts, mocking his speed as he orders his men onto a boat to begin the pursuit. To be honest, a boat is much faster. Just as they are about to set sail, the shoreline suddenly erupts into a massive wall of fire. A perfectly timed distraction, it seems. We see Dachuan dragging the lighting braziers from the dock onto a pile of cargo that hadn't been shipped out yet. The fire spreads instantly, forcing Wang Chong to abandon the chase and order his men to fetch water to save their precious goods. Through the flickering light of the flames, he catches a glimpse of the gang members, swearing and brandishing machetes as they swarm toward Dachuan. Blood stains the ground, and at that grim sight, he exits the simulation and looks over at the real Dachuan sitting beside him. The poor boy is currently staring at someone else's bowl of porridge, hungry and drooling. He may not be the smartest, but he is loyal to the end. He makes a silent vow. If he ever finds the strength to escape the Blackstone gang, he will certainly take Dachuan with him. There is no time to mourn Dachuan's death in the simulation. He cannot let that sacrifice be in vain. He must survive. He must live until he finds a chance to cultivate, then inherit those powers in reality to save both himself and Dachuan. To escape the gang's exploitation, he pours every ounce of strength into his limbs, swimming through the freezing, turbulent waters to the far bank. By some miracle, the so-called river god, or demon, more likely, never appears. Perhaps it had already received word from the gang. It was likely waiting at that mysterious downstream outlet, completely unaware of the desperate escape happening upriver. After reaching the shore, he faces a critical choice for his next move: seek refuge with his third sister in Bayun County, wander the wilderness and hide in the deep mountains, or, strangely enough, simply swim back. Yes, the third option is quite the joke. The simulation pauses once more, waiting for a decision on how to proceed. He takes a moment to consider the possibilities. Option 3 is obviously absurd and is immediately discarded. The real question is, his sister or the wild? He actually has 3 siblings. His eldest brother and second sister vanished while foraging in the mountains when he was 8, never to be heard from again. His third sister married into a family in Bayun County when he was 15. He recalls her husband is a martial artist. If he goes to her, he might gain access to martial arts and learn how to cultivate without natural talent. He chooses the first option, and so he chooses to seek out his sister. Through the pitch black night and biting wind, he sprints through the forest toward Bayun County. Bayun County sits right next to Chinga County, and since they aren't too far apart, he knows the general direction to take. 10 days pass as he flees the Blackstone gang's pursuit, surviving on wild fruit and game while occasionally passing through small villages. He steals grain when he can, nearly getting caught by villagers who mistake him for a wild man. Just one more mountain, and he'll arrive. Suddenly, a group of figures leaps from the trees, blocking his path. I opened this mountain, a voice bellows, and I planted these trees. It's the classic opening line of a bandit encounter, and the leader, surprisingly, is a woman. She is broad-shouldered with a quadruple chin and a face full of scars. One look at her stance tells him she is a formidable expert. We know that bandits usually just want money, and since he has none, it shouldn't be too difficult, but he is quite handsome. My ex-husband just died, and you've arrived at the perfect time, the leader says. Before he can react, he is hoisted up and carried away. It isn't every day you see bandits kidnapping a man for his looks. That night, the Flying Tiger stronghold is brightly lit and buzzing. The atmosphere is festive and full of joy, but as we often see, the joys and sorrows of men are rarely the same. He is stripped, scrubbed clean, and dressed in a groom's red robes. Now, he sits in the bridal chamber, waiting for his new bride. The female bandit who claimed him is named Su Lingrong. Her father, Su Hu, is the formidable great chieftain of this very stronghold. Hearing that his daughter is entering her 6th marriage, Su Hu is overjoyed. Outside the room, he repeatedly gives his daughter instructions. He tells her to be careful this time and ensure she conceives a grandson. Listening to this, our hero's skin begins to crawl. He suddenly realizes exactly how Su Lingrong's previous husbands met their ends. Then, smelling of wine, Lingrong pushes open the door. Watching this unfold, one can't help but feel a shiver of sympathy, as if we were experiencing this ordeal right alongside him. It seems he chose the wrong path this time. The next morning, he sleeps until noon and finds Lingrong waiting for him. She smilingly gives him new clothes and orders the entire camp never to bully him. The nights are an ordeal, but the days are tolerable. He eats his fill of meat and does no manual labor, spending his time basking in the sun. A comfortable life, in a way. When he mentions wanting to learn martial arts, Lingrong brings him all the stronghold's manuals and offers to teach him personally. Unfortunately, he lacks the natural bone structure for cultivation. He can only learn basic moves to keep his body fit and strong. The second year of the simulation arrives. He is now 19, and it is time to draw a new trait. The draw is successful, dance trainee. He is now skilled at singing and dancing. The system asks if he wishes to adjust his traits. He decides to replace developed deltoids with dance trainee. It's another useless trait, to be perfectly honest. But he tells himself that as long as he lives long enough, he will eventually draw something useful. We reach his 3rd year at the camp. He looks remarkably refreshed. Though he hasn't mastered martial arts, he continues to exercise, both by choice and by force. His physique has certainly improved. He isn't quite at a dancer's level yet, but he is much sturdier than an average man. And if he weren't sturdy, he would have likely followed in the footsteps of the previous husbands. He pretends to have fully integrated into life at the stronghold, even using his new trait. He performs a series of moves for Su Lingrong, introducing himself to the bandit brothers as a trainee who has been in the camp for 2.5 years. After watching his strange dance-like martial arts, the crowd is left in shock. Suddenly, a panicked cry echoes from the stronghold gates. A scout shouts that government troops are attacking. In the main hall, Su Hu reacts with predictable fury. He slams his wine bowl down in rage, demanding to know how the soldiers managed to arrive without a single word of warning. He asks where the patrols, sentries, and traps were. It turns out the 12th leader betrayed them, leading the soldiers through a secret cargo path. Hearing this, our hero's eyes light up. To be honest, this is the perfect opportunity to finally make his escape. But then, something unexpected happens. Lingrong leads him to the mouth of a hidden cave, telling him to keep walking inside to reach the next mountain, a secret known only to her and her father. She urges him to flee so no one can catch him. He is stunned. It seems she truly fell for the act he put on during his time at the camp. Seeing him hesitate, she continues to press him, calling him her husband and begging him to save himself. She tells him not to worry about her as she goes to lead the soldiers away. Then, with a sudden shove, she tosses him into the cave. She handles him like a small chick. He realizes, however, that since he isn't actually a bandit, he has no reason to fear the law. He watches Lingrong's formidable, broad-shouldered silhouette as she grips her 2 massive hammers and prepares for battle. Now he must decide his next move. Option 1, go deep into the cave and escape through the secret mountain pass. Option 2, return to the stronghold to fight alongside his wife. Or Option 3, collaborate with the government to wipe out the bandits entirely. While the version of him inside the simulation might be swayed by emotion, the version of him in reality remains perfectly rational. He knows this first simulation is critical. He must survive as long as possible to draw more traits and stay alive. Securing a chance at the path of martial arts is the only main goal here. If he doesn't run now, when will he? And so he chooses. He chooses option 1, to leave through the secret mountain pass. We see him continue toward Bayun County. For days later, he arrives and finds himself walking through the busy streets. He spots a convoy of government officials. On the prison carts are Su Hu, Su Lingrom, and other bandit leaders, all heavily wounded. They are at death's door. The lower-ranking bandits were killed and left in the wilderness, deemed not even worth bringing back for interrogation. He slips quietly into an alleyway. He remembers where his third sister's house is, having visited when she first got married. But why has it been seized? The small courtyard is covered in white official seals. He climbs the wall to peer inside. The place has been stripped bare, leaving nothing but fallen leaves. He finds a neighbor nearby to ask what happened. The neighbor mentions Shen Qingshan, that monster who apparently murdered 10 families in a single night. He was beheaded at the market last month, and the magistrate sentenced his entire extended family to exile. The neighbor eyes him suspiciously. The man asks what his relation to the killer is. Our hero quickly realizes he shouldn't be part of those 9 generations of kin. He wonders how Shen Qingshan became a murderer. This brother-in-law of his was a man of the law, after all. It makes no sense. How could Qingshan have turned into a killer? This was the man married to his sister. He remembers him as a dignified man of integrity, someone truly extraordinary. Moreover, he held an official post. He was a demon slayer in the county demon suppression division. There must be some kind of injustice at play here. According to the laws of the Great Qian, his sister must have been exiled as well. In the simulation, Qingshan is beheaded a year later. He isn't sure if the crime has even officially been recorded yet. She is his only living relative. He can't just leave her to her fate. Unfortunately, all he can do is worry. He is barely surviving himself, still under the shadow of the Black Stone Gang's control. Not knowing exactly how the Great Qian calculates family ties, he decides to play it safe and takes a new name. Calling himself Chen Dong, he finds work as a waiter at the Well Inn. The owner is a kind-hearted widow. She takes good care of him, providing plenty of food and never making his work difficult. However, some of the guests are far less pleasant. They often resort to violence and insults against commoners like him, especially certain martial artists who consider themselves superior. To be honest, these powerful figures don't spare a single thought for the lives of ordinary people. We see him develop a certain kind husband aura, an air of reliability that naturally makes him more popular with the ladies. He is asked if he wishes to adjust his traits, and he chooses to replace his previous dancing flair with this new, gentler persona. One day, a martial artist throws a tantrum because the tofu is salty, causing a scene and leaving our hero with a badly broken arm. The kind-hearted widow helps him with his bandages, telling him not to hold a grudge since commoners must always bow to martial artists. She says surviving at all is a blessing, but he mutters indignantly that a young man's poverty is only temporary. He vows that one day, as Chen Dong, he will reach the peak of martial arts and make the world acknowledge him. Deep down, he feels a burning sense of urgency and a fierce desire to change his station in life. A little later, he and the widow are married, and he suddenly finds himself the official owner of the Well Inn. His life shifts from the bottom of society to the merchant class. It seems taking the easy path really does save a lot of trouble. Who says basic traits are useless? He certainly wouldn't agree, though we can only imagine what his new wife looks like. The simulation continues, pushing through the years until suddenly, a flash of green appears amidst the black and white text. A trait has turned green. By the 10th year, at age 27, he and the lady of the inn remain deeply in love. During the day, they treat each other with mutual respect, using his modern management and scientific knowledge to improve the business. Together, they make the inn flourish, turning it into a booming success. But unfortunately, life isn't all sunshine and roses. As mere mortals, there are things they must simply endure, such as theft, raids, and the occasional lawless bandit. They deal with martial artists who refuse to pay and heavy government taxes, yet compared to most, their lives are quite good. The only real regret in their peaceful life is that they have not yet been blessed with any children. His wife often sighs, wishing for a child, and spends her free time sitting by her needlework, lost in thought. She often sits in a daze, clutching the tiny tiger-headed shoes she stitched together, one careful needle at a time. By the 11th year, at age 28, it is time for another trait draw. The draw is a success. The older, the luckier. This law begins to take effect once he reaches the age of 60. Every 10 years, he is guaranteed a rare trait, and the chances for higher tier rewards will slightly increase during those draws. After years of common white traits, he finally lands a green one. To be honest, if we look at the actual probabilities, this was an incredibly lucky pull, considering the chance for a rare trait is currently only 0.9%. He can wait until he is 60 to equip it, and a guaranteed rare isn't bad at all. In the simulation that follows, we see just how difficult it is to live as a mere mortal in a world plagued by rogue martial artists, demons, and constant war. In the 13th year, at age 30, something wonderful happens. He and the lady of the inn are finally expecting a child. The lady weeps tears of joy, and he is equally happy for her. In the 14th year, at age 31, a boy is born. The Well Inn holds a massive 3-day feast, inviting every neighbor and elder in the entire city to celebrate. His wife worries, telling him he is being too extravagant. She reminds him that despite the money they've made, life is still full of risks and uncertainties. He argues that instead of letting thieves steal it or the local magistrate seize it through taxes, he'd rather spend it on joy. He declares that the birth of Chen Dong's son must be known by all. His wife sighs, telling him he's getting ahead of himself again. He insists he is not meant for a mediocre life. By the 16th year, at age 33, their second daughter is born, and once again, he hosts a grand 3-day banquet. By the 20th year, at age 37, with a son, a daughter, and a thriving business, his life feels complete. Gradually, he almost forgets that he is even inside a simulation. Everything feels far too real and far too happy. In the 23rd year, at age 40, a demonic martial artist storms into Bayun County, clutching a mysterious banner. A pitch-black banner billows as the demonic artist slaughters everyone in sight. Neither the local dancers nor the officials are any match for him. He kills them all, trapping their souls within his banner. Eventually, the demon slayers are alerted and engage him in a battle that lasts for days. At the cost of his own life, a slayer finally wounds him. As the demonic artist flees, he casually kills Chen Dong's daughter in passing. He drains every drop of her essence, leaving nothing behind. It was a senseless act of cruelty, truly. Overwhelmed by grief, the lady of the inn falls terminally ill. Chen Dong holds her hand, watching helplessly as she slowly fades away. He buries mother and daughter together. Looking at the two lonely new graves, his heart is so full of agony, he feels he cannot go on. But he still has a son, and he knows he cannot collapse yet. In the 33rd year, at age 50, a legend arises in the south. A brilliant empress emerges, uniting the scattered 100 nations of the southern border into a single, formidable force. She launches a counteroffensive against the central Central Plains, pushing the front lines northward until Bayun County is on the verge of becoming a battlefield. His son decides to head to the front to defend their home. Shindong pleads with him, asking if he can stay, for the war is far too dangerous. The boy asks what a home is worth if the country no longer exists. He reminds his father of what he used to tell everyone. He says that Shindong's son was destined for greatness, and now his time has come. And so, Shindong walks his son to the city gates. He watches him depart until he is out of sight. In that single moment, he seems to age a lifetime. In the 35th year, at age 52, he receives his son's ashes and a final letter. 2 years of constant anxiety have finally ended in the result he feared most. He buries the boy beside his mother and sister. He sits by the graves for 3 months until his hair turns completely white. By the 37th year, at age 54, the great Qian dynasty suffers defeat after defeat. Bayun County is finally captured by the Empress's forces. The area becomes the territory of the Southern Alliance. They say bandits are like a comb, but soldiers are like a razor in the Southern Army. Goes door to door demanding money and grain as they pass through. They call it a loan, but everyone knows the truth. Nothing borrowed will ever be returned. His inn is not spared, and nearly all his visible wealth is hauled away by the soldiers. Fortunately, his wife had once told him she hid some silver under the old tree at home. By using it sparingly, he manages to survive. After Bayun County suffered through this disaster, everyone was left destitute. Business at the inn became harder with each passing day. By the 40th year, at age 57, a tiger demon emerged from the wilderness. It stormed into the county, causing absolute chaos and destruction wherever it went. We see crowds scattering in panic as houses collapse. The demon slayers mobilized their entire force, engaging the beast right there in the heart of the city. It was a desperate, bloody struggle. Whether the tiger demon was actually killed remains unclear, but during the fierce battle with the slayers, his 3-story inn, his most valuable asset, was smashed into complete ruins. To see his life's work destroyed so casually was a bitter pill to swallow. Naturally, he wanted an explanation and sought compensation from the demon slayers. But before he could even see which way the gates opened, he was struck down and thrown to the ground. Realizing there was nothing left for him, he chose to leave the city and build a small thatched hut. He settled right beside the graves of his family. Without any martial talent or root bone, all he could do was wait in silence. He hoped the system would finally grant him a talent trait. In the 42nd year, at age 59, the draw for a new trait begins. Unfortunately, the trait drawn this year is once again useless. Outside the simulator, we can't help but feel the weight of his struggle. A long sigh escapes as the tragedies within the simulation reveal just how cruel this world can be. It is a sobering realization, truly. The matchmaker's nebula trait is equipped as he nears 60. This life has been far too bitter, but he must hold on and not collapse. Perhaps the dawn of victory will arrive tomorrow. We return to the simulation, where he lives in that thatched hut outside the city walls. He works the fields and grows vegetables by day. After sunset, he speaks to his family's graves before falling into a deep sleep under the moonlight. Though lonely, he has found a brief moment of peace. In the 43rd year, at age 60, the trait extraction begins once more. The pity system of the matchmaker's nebula is finally triggered, and the draw is a guaranteed success. At long last, something changes. He obtains a low-grade root bone, a green tier trait. With this, the old man finally has the chance to turn his luck around. When asked to adjust the trait, he selects yes. Instantly, a warm current surges through his entire body, revitalizing his aging frame. He hasn't forgotten his mission in the simulation. Taking all his savings, he travels to the city's Benlay Martial Arts Hall. The instructor, Neo Dayton, stands with his hands behind his back in his training gear. He looks at the old man with an amused, skeptical expression. Learning martial arts at 60, the instructor asks. Well, at 60, one is arguably in the prime of their struggle. He simply pours a pile of silver coins before Neo Dayton, stating he has the money and they need only teach him. Taking on a disciple old enough to be his own father is a massive challenge for Neo Dayton, but then again, the old man is paying far too much to refuse. Martial arts is the cultivation of 3 energies: blood, spirit, and essence. Just as one eats a meal bite by bite, these energies are mastered one by one, starting with external techniques. Practicing these external arts strengthens the blood chi, which in turn increases one's strength, speed, and physical durability. Once he feels a warm current in his dantian, it means his blood chi has finally surpassed the limits of ordinary mortals. That energy can then be stored. While the uninitiated call this internal power, true martial artists know better. It is actually blood chi refined to the point of control, the first realm of martial arts, the body refining stage. In the 43rd year, at age 61, a full year of training yields no progress. Neo Dayton sighs and advises Shindong to simply give up. In an aging body, blood chi leaks away far too quickly. There is simply no logic in starting so late in life. His fellow disciples and old acquaintances in the county gossip behind his back, calling him unrealistic and restless in his old age. He ignores the rumors entirely, focusing his mind on study and practice. To be honest, he refuses to die a poor old man. Shindong is determined to step onto the path of martial arts. By the 52nd year, at age 70, the trait draw begins. The matchmaker's nebula pity system triggers once more, granting a green tier trait. Effort yields results. It suggests that when you persevere in a task, you will surely gain something, though perhaps not very much. He replaces his old trait with this new one. Yet, after 10 years of training, he returns to the world still a mere mortal. Neo Dayton's grandson has already been born, yet Shindong still visits the Benlay Martial Arts Hall every single day. Unlike the others who study various techniques and spar, he practices in isolation, focusing on a single external art. He practices the reckless bull technique. After 10 years, his blood chi has improved, but he still hasn't reached the standard of a true martial artist. In the beginning, Neo Dayton was happy to take his tuition fees, but eventually, he stopped charging him, out of respect for the elderly, of course. Listen up, apprentices. Look closely at this man. The instructor calls out. He began his martial arts journey at the age of 60. Now, at 70 years old, he has still failed to truly enter the path of martial arts. This is our protagonist, Shindong. Neo Dayton's son, Neo Yuqian, is now the head of the Benlay Martial Arts Hall. He is primarily responsible for recruiting, and today, he is using Shindong as a cautionary tale to motivate a new batch of students. What can we learn from Old Man Shen? He asks. Exactly. Regardless of whether you succeed in your cultivation or not, you must take that first step. Even if you end up like him, still stuck in the same spot at 70, at least you won't regret having tried. Just as he says this, Shindong suddenly feels a warm current in his dantian. He has finally reached the body refining stage. Seeing this, Neo Yuqian changes his tune instantly. You see, even Old Man Shen can succeed starting at 60. If he can do it, what's stopping you teenagers? Nothing is impossible in this world for those who persevere. Upon hearing the news of his breakthrough, Neo Dayton is genuinely happy for him and invites him to a family banquet that evening. Old Shun, I've heard your story, Neo Dayton says. The food at the Ui used to be famous for miles around. As they reach the more bittersweet parts of the tale, even Neo Dayton, a relative outsider, finds his eyes welling up with tears. I don't know why you're pushing yourself so hard at your age, but I wish you a long life and good health. He offers Shindong a room to stay in, and for the first time in over a decade, our hero feels the warmth of a home. That night, he sleeps more peacefully than ever. However, he hasn't forgotten his true mission, to draw more traits. He must train hard so he can inherit as much as possible when the simulation ends. He knows his natural talent is low and his age is high. Because his progress is so slow, he doesn't waste time on complex techniques, focusing solely on external arts to boost his blood chi. Year after year, he trains at sunrise and rests at sunset, balancing hard work with health. By the 61st year, year. At age 79, his cultivation has progressed slowly. It has taken him 9 years to reach the third stage of body refining. Over these years, though he has avoided demons, wars, and martial disasters, his body is still moving uncontrollably toward the abyss of decay. A sudden, severe cold leaves him paralyzed in bed, unable to move. Now requiring care for his daily needs, he can no longer train. Neo-Daden has also grown old, and the martial arts business is struggling under the pressure of larger sections. With no new students, the hall is near collapse. Today, hearing Qindong is unwell. Neo-Daden hurries over to visit. Old man Qin, how are you feeling today? Qindong offers a smile that looks more like a sob. He feels close to death. Watching the simulation's countdown timer, he only hopes he can hold on just a little longer to reach the 80-year milestone. Don't talk like that, Neo-Daden says. You'll live to 100. Oh, Daden, Qindong replies. Living to 100 isn't that easy. I lost my wife young, outlived my children, and saw my life's work destroyed. His heart has long been riddled with holes. Neo-Daden looks at the falling snow outside and sighs. Old man Shun. In this life, suffering is the main theme. Happiness is merely an interlude. In the 62nd year, at age 80, the trait draw begins, finally triggering the guaranteed reward for his long-term persistence and luck. The draw is successful. Serious punch, green. When he uses basic physical attacks instead of complex martial arts, his destructive power increases up to 10 times, and he won't suffer fractures from the recoil. However, he loses 1 hair per use. Watching his simulated self barely clinging to life just to reach that 80th year, we can't help but feel a certain weight. It's a bitter realization. This life was truly too hard. He can only hope that with a better foundation, the next simulation will be kinder. The simulation ends. The final evaluation reads, a vine leaping into the cold river waves, a fading lamp hidden amidst the mortal world. Protected for 60 years by the spring breeze, swimming toward the heavens as the fountain sings. Congratulations. He receives the following inheritance. First, 62 years of travel memories. Second, the cultivation of the third stage of body refining. Third, the serious punch trait. He also gains effort brings rewards. Luckier with age, low tier root bone, and the oddly named genie is too beautiful, along with little white streak in the waves, totaling 62 traits. Finally, he inherits his grandfather Meng Yojing's basic skills. The rewards arrive instantly. Deep down, he feels a sudden, warm current surging within his dantian. His entire body is liberated from exhaustion and hardship, as if he now possesses inexhaustible strength. His very spirit, it seems, has reached new heights. He is ready for the Black Tiger Gang, having stepped into the body refining stage. His available trait slots have increased to 5. After a moment's thought, he equips low tier root bone and serious punch. He adds effort brings rewards and super pain tolerance. System, he asks, when does the next simulation begin? The simulation is on cooldown with 1 year remaining. However, he can complete a guide mission to gain an immediate entry. The mission, if you can't beat them, join them. He must reveal his martial cultivation to infiltrate the Blackstone Gang. The rewards are tempting, an extra simulation, a premium trait draw, and a low tier spiritual item. The flame iron heavy sword. Mythical traits are truly a cheat code, aren't they? By securing a new simulation, he can also pick up some extra rewards. The cooldown is simply too long to wait, and the mission's objectives align perfectly with his current situation. There are martial artists in the Blackstone Gang. If he were to flee now, they would surely pursue him by boat. Unless he abandons Dachuan, he might not escape. Better to pretend to join them, then find the right moment to take Dachuan and leave. His mind made up, he suddenly slams his old porcelain bowl against the ground. Steamed buns and watery porridge every day aren't enough to sustain a scholar, let alone a laborer. The surrounding workers are stunned, their eyes wide with disbelief. They wonder if Chun-Yi has finally lost his mind. Does he want to be whipped to death? Being new, he clearly doesn't understand the cruelty of the Black Tiger Gang. The overseer approaches, whip in hand. The chatter of the laborers has caught his attention. Chun-Yi, he barks, what do you think you're doing? Before he can finish, Dachuan slams his bowl down as well. Dachuan, and what are you doing? Dachuan simply grins and says he doesn't know why he did it. He just really felt like smashing a bowl. The overseer sends him sprawling with a single lash. A fool indeed. The overseer curses, but to Chun-Yi, the movement seems to happen in slow motion. He reaches out and catches the whip. With a sharp tug, he snatches it away. Shocked and enraged by this sudden defiance, the overseer bellows for him to return it. Chun-Yi scoffs at the man's arrogance. The overseer is hardly a king. He simply turns the whip around and strikes back. The power of a third stage body refiner explodes in that single blow, sending the overseer flying straight into the Qinghai waters. The head foreman, Wang Chong, watches this with a cold sneer. He admits Chun-Yi has some skill, but he isn't impressed. He decides it's time to teach the boy a lesson in discipline. With a confident air, he settles into a fighting stance. We see the blood chi floating around Wang Chong, marking him as a mere first stage refiner. And in this world, every stage matters. Since each level doubles the strength of the previous one, Chun-Yi feels no fear at all. To be honest, he's barely trying. Realizing he is outmatched, Wang Chong shouts desperately, reminding Chun-Yi that this is Blackstone Gang territory, a classic bully's tactic. He tries to intimidate him with the name of their leader, the Black Crab Iron Claw. But Chun-Yi is tired of the talk. He delivers a resounding slap to silence the man's arrogance. Then, he follows it up with another backhanded strike for good measure. He punishes him for the meager rations they were forced to eat. Wang Chong begins to wail, begging for mercy through his tears. Chun-Yi isn't finished, delivering 2 more slaps as payment for the forced labor and the contracts they were coerced into signing. Wang Chong blames the Black Tiger Gang, pleading for his life. Chun-Yi doesn't believe a word of it and slams him to the ground. He even accuses him of feeding people to monsters. Well, to be perfectly honest, that hasn't actually happened in this timeline yet. It seems he's getting his memories from the simulation mixed up. But who can blame him for being a little overenthusiastic? Wang Chong is left speechless and weeping. The commotion finally draws out the leader of the Blackstone Gang, Shursan, and his companion. Beside him stands the 4th master, a burly man. Seeing Chun-Yi's prowess, they both feel a sudden desire to recruit him. Shursan suggests the 4th master test the boy's strength. Chun-Yi unleashes a serious punch, using 10 times his normal power. The blow forces the 6th stage 4th master to retreat several steps. He is impressed, though a true life and death struggle would be different. Chun-Yi knows he is no match for the 4th master, let alone the enigmatic Shursan, who seems quite satisfied with his display of power. He is immediately offered the position of instructor, making him a gang official. As for Wang Chong, for the crime of suppressing talent, he is unceremoniously tossed into the Qinghai River to feed the fish. That evening, the Blackstone Gang holds a banquet in Chun-Yi's honor. During the festivities, a gang member rushes in to report to Shursan that tomorrow is the 15th time to feed the river god. Shursan tells the 4th master to pick some laborers from the docks, specifically mentioning a certain fool who eats too much and must go. Hearing this, Chun-Yi freezes. The plot has shifted, and now it's the Chun's turn to be sacrificed. He tells the leader that the boy is his fellow townsman. He argues that the boy is clumsy and offers to take any task himself instead, but Shursan simply frowns at the suggestion. Shursan insists the fool is perfect for this particular job and tells Chun-Yi to focus on being an instructor. To be honest, the matter is settled. Seeing that Shursan's mind is made up, Chun-Yi says no more. After a few drinks, he feigns intoxication and takes his leave. Once back in his room with the door locked, he opens the system interface to find his guidance mission is finally complete. As a reward, he receives the Salt Iron Heavy Sword, a fine addition to his growing arsenal, one might say. With the simulator's cooldown refreshed, the system asks if he would like to begin a new simulation. Naturally, he agrees, and so, the simulation begins. We see the familiar glow of the interface as the new path unfolds unfolds before him. To help Chun escape the gang's control, he intentionally reveals his strength as a martial artist to gain their favor. This earns him the instructor position, but deep down, he has absolutely no interest in gang life and only seeks a way out. On the fourth day, while the sky over the river is still dark, he finds the opportunity he was looking for. He watches as the fourth master leads several lackeys, taking Chun and a few other laborers toward the lower reaches of the river. Knowing the fourth master is easily fooled, he claims he can't sleep and asks to tag along for a simple stroll. The fourth master thinks nothing of it and brings him along. Before long, the group arrives at the Shirley Pavilion. The fourth master pushes Chun and the three others to the riverbank, shouting out toward the dark water for the river god to appear. "We've brought your meal. Eat and drink your fill," the fourth master shouts, while we notice the other gang members instinctively backing away. Clearly, they harbor a deep fear of this river god. Meanwhile, the three oblivious laborers still clutch their lunchboxes, completely unaware of the truth. They truly believe they are here to deliver food, not realizing that they are the food. Suddenly, the calm surface of the Qinghai River begins to swirl. Fish and shrimp leap frantically from the water, as if some great terror beneath makes the depths unbearable. And it is at this exact moment that Chun-Yi, standing right behind the fourth master, secretly gathers all his strength into his right leg. With a powerful, decisive kick, the fourth master is sent flying into the river with a massive splash. "Instructor Chun," the lackey scream. "What do you think you're doing?" The three gang members quickly surround him, but facing their blades, Chun-Yi simply smiles. With his current cultivation level, dealing with these ordinary thugs is more than easy. One by one, he tosses them all into the dark river water. The Blackstone gang knows exactly what lurks in these depths, and they begin swimming for their lives toward the shore. "Chun-Yi, you dare betray me? When I get out, I'll have your skin," the fourth master bellows, still making threats. But in the water, it's as if giant hands are pulling them down. Despite their struggling, they aren't reaching the shore. They are drifting closer to the center. Amidst a low, guttural growl, a massive beast slowly surfaces. It has the body of a tortoise, but with a serpent for a tail. Terrified, the fourth master screams, "River god, there's been a mistake. We aren't this month's meal. Those people on the bank are the ones. I'm the fourth master of the Blackstone gang. Look closely." Now this beast's eyesight, as it turns out, isn't very good at all. It can't see his face. It only sees a tasty snack. The creature opens its massive, bloody maw, lunges toward the fourth master, and swallows him whole in a single bite. Well, that is one way to settle a grudge. With the fourth master dealt with, the system presents three new choices. 1. Take Chun and wander the world in search of martial opportunities. 2. Take Chun to Bayun County to seek refuge with his third sister. Or 3. Return to the Blackstone gang alone. He could claim the river demon went mad and ate the fourth master, but he hesitates. To be honest, the third option is just a joke. He decides it's better to check on his sister. Besides, Bayun County has a good place to settle Chun. He chooses the second path. The simulation continues. After escaping the Blackstone gang, we see Chun-Yi and Chun making their way toward Bayun County. This journey home feels much more secure, as he is now a powerful third-stage body refiner. Well, powerful for this area, at least. Ordinary beasts and common bandits no longer pose any threat to him. As they approach Bayun County, he encounters a very familiar face. "I planted this tree. I own this mountain." It's the same old opening line from the same barrel-shaped lady bandit we know so well. This accidental encounter truly leaves him between laughter and tears. "Oh, what a handsome young man you are," she remarks playfully. "You don't seem frightened at all to see us outlaws who live with our heads on the line," she continues, looking him over. "We know that among these bandits blocking the road, only Su Linglong possesses the martial cultivation of a fourth-stage body refiner. The rest are just ordinary men." Chun-Yi walks to a large tree by the roadside and slams his fist into the trunk, causing it to shatter. With the power of a serious punch, the blow carried the weight of a body refining stage master, leaving Su Linglong completely stunned. "We have offended a senior. Please forgive us. Here is some silver for your journey," she says. He simply smiles at the gesture. He accepts the silver, thinking it would be foolish to refuse. In exchange for the money, he decides to give her a friendly warning. He considers that since he didn't fall into the bandit den this time, he will reach his sister's house much earlier than before. Perhaps now he can discover what really happened to his brother-in-law, Shin Shan, who became a murderous maniac in the last simulation. Back then, the man was beheaded, the house seized, and the family exiled. To be honest, the whole situation was completely baffling. His sister's judgment of character couldn't be that poor, could it? The next day, he and Chun finally arrive in Bayun County. They find his sister's home, and thankfully, there are no official seals on the door. He breathes a sigh of relief and pushes it open. In the courtyard, we see a small child, perhaps 2 or 3 years old, just beginning to babble and learn how to speak. A woman finishes hanging the last piece of laundry and turns around to see him. For a moment, time seems to stand still. His sister's eyes immediately overflow with tears. She had already heard the tragic news of the massacre at Luoding village. She assumed he had perished under the blade like the other villagers. Seeing him alive today, she is overcome with a joyful shock. His third sister prepares a table overflowing with food to celebrate their reunion, just as her husband, Shin Shan, returns home. Seeing that Chun-Yi is still alive, Shan's eyes moisten with relief, while Chun happily stuffs her face until her mouth is glistening. She is absolutely delighted. For Chun, a full stomach is all she needs to be content, even if she's just watching ants all day. That simple life is enough for her. The next day, we see Chun-Yi bringing Chun to the Yahello Inn to meet the proprietress. The lady of the house is as welcoming as ever, asking if they need a room, but Chun-Yi explains he's there to find work for his friend. He admits she's a bit slow and can't handle complex tasks, but she can certainly sweep, wash dishes, and she has plenty of strength for heavy lifting. The proprietress, Mei San-Yang, looks at Chun with some hesitation, noting that while she has a kind heart, a lack of wits is a problem. Seeing her waver, Chun-Yi quickly adds that she doesn't need a salary. She only needs to be fed until she's full. Mei San-Yang is pleasantly surprised, joking that it would weigh on her conscience if she didn't hire the girl under such terms. Knowing that Mei San-Yang is a woman of good character, Chun-Yi feels that leaving Chun at the Yahello Inn is the perfect arrangement. Upon returning to his sister's home, he discusses martial arts with Shin Shan, who is impressed to learn of Chun-Yi's natural talent. Shin Shan pulls out several cultivation manuals and hands them over, explaining that these are the secret techniques of the Shin family. Sadly, much has been lost over the generations, leaving only these 4 mid-tier manuals, which are still more than enough to secure a good life. Mastering them would make finding a prestigious job in this small county quite easy, as these ancient books possess an undeniable aura of power. It's clear at a glance that they are special. For the next period of time, we see Chun-Yi beginning his dedicated training at his sister's house. However, he doesn't want to be a burden on his family forever. Shin Shan suggests he should try out for the Demon Slayer department. He could become a Demon Slayer, just like Shan himself. While they talk, Chun-Yi asks his brother-in-law for any news regarding the massacre. He wants to know if the government found anything about Luoding village, but Shan admits they have no leads. The attackers were far too professional. They were well trained and left absolutely no traces behind. That night, Chun-Yi finds himself tossing and turning, unable to sleep. He can't help but wonder, why slaughter everyone in Luoding village? It was just a poor mountain village full of hungry farmers. After all, he couldn't fathom how they had provoked such enemies. After staying with his third sister for a year, he continued his martial arts training under Shin Shan. Although his overall cultivation realm hadn't increased, his techniques had certainly improved. To be honest, the traits he drew this year remained quite useless. However, his understanding of the martial path grew much deeper. For commoners, we see that martial arts are divided into 6 distinct realms. These are body refining, giant spirit, soul extraction, spirit, spirit sea, and focus spirit. Why specify for commoners, you might ask? Because any realm beyond focus spirit has nothing to do with ordinary people. Reaching that level is already a feat for the elite. One would have to be a 1 in a million talent to get there. As for the quality of cultivation manuals, they are categorized into 5 tiers. These range from low, mid, and high tier, up to the legendary Earth and Heaven tiers. As for those last two, Earth and Heaven manuals, one might as well pretend they don't exist. They are treated as strategic resources, guarded like crown jewels by the powerful. They are firmly controlled by the imperial family and the top martial sections. In the second year, at age 19, thanks to Shun Qingshan's introduction, Shun-Yi participated in the selection trials for the Demon Slayer department in Baiyun County. Among the crowd of aspiring warriors, his cultivation level was essentially at the very bottom. However, he possessed his serious punch. During the sparring matches, his opponents were consistently overwhelmed by him. He successfully entered the department, becoming a Demon Slayer with a stable income. However, a regular Demon Slayer has no official rank. It's more like being a contract worker. One must reach the rank of Demon Historian, like Qingshan, to be officially listed in the government registry as a formal official. Shun-Yi was assigned to Shin Qingshan's own demon slaying squad. On workdays, he followed his brother-in-law on duty, using his free time to ask for martial advice. It was a very convenient arrangement. One day, Shin Qingshan received an official mission from the department. In Holong village, to the east of the county, a bull demon was causing trouble. The chief ordered Qingshan to lead a team to eliminate it. Our group of demon slayers rode out of the city and entered the village. To their surprise, the place was peaceful, with the elderly and children enjoying themselves. It didn't look like a demon had ever been there. The team split up to investigate. In the distance, Shun-Yi thought he heard a faint, desperate cry for help. He followed the sound and pushed open the gate of a courtyard. Before his eyes lay the mangled corpses of villagers, scattered everywhere. The air was thick with the scent of fresh blood. Suddenly, a dark shadow lunged from the corner with lethal intent. He instinctively drew his sword to parry, but the opponent possessed immense strength and a body as hard as iron. Before he could even identify the creature, he was slammed to the ground. By some strange coincidence, his sword remained in hand. At that moment, heavy footsteps thundered outside. The county constable, Han Sheng, burst in with 20 men, shouting for the criminal to stop. He accused Chun-Yi of breaking the law and massacring 18 people from 3 households in Holong village, a truly heinous crime. The constable ordered him to surrender. In an instant, Chun-Yi realized this was a trap originally meant for Shin Qingshan. This was the very massacre incident mentioned in the previous simulation, but through a twist of fate, the blame had fallen on him instead. To mobilize both the demon slayers and the constables in Baiyun County, only the county magistrate could have the authority. Shin Qingshan and his squad arrived just in time to block Han Sheng. The tension was palpable, as if a single word would spark a bloodbath. A voice boomed, asking Shin Qingshan what he thought he was doing, as a figure descended from the sky like a bolt of lightning. The newcomer was Feng Yuqing, the chief of the Baiyun Demon Slayer department, whose martial prowess was unrivaled in the region. Having reached the soul extraction realm, Feng Yuqing's presence alone meant that Shin Qingshan would not be able to protect Chun-Yi today. His brother-in-law shouted for him not to worry, while the conspirators watched with treacherous, calculating eyes. The air was thick with deceit, a web of lies woven so tightly that the truth seemed almost irrelevant in the face of such treachery. Shin Qingshan knew he couldn't keep him safe here. He promised to seek justice from the magistrate and clear Chun-Yi's name. Knowing full well this was a setup, Chun-Yi told his brother-in-law not to worry about him, but to protect his sister and niece instead. Since this was just a simulation, he had no fear of death. Soon after, we find him in the depths of the county jail. Bound to a torture rack, he was surrounded by a gruesome array of tools, branding irons, whips, blades, and axes. The interrogator sneered, advising Chun-Yi to confess his crimes honestly and sign the papers to avoid further pain. Instead of resisting, he simply laughed. He admitted to everything, shouting that he had killed them all just to end the charade. The interrogator suggested the confession was likely already written, urging him to just provide a thumbprint since everyone was busy and he wouldn't survive the torture anyway. He advised him to confess early to avoid suffering. Han Sheng pulled out the papers, still following the formal procedure, and asked if he confessed to the Holong village murders. When asked if he pleaded guilty, Chun-Yi simply said yes. They then asked about a burglary and murder case in Sheeping village, and again, he admitted to it. They even brought up a case of killed cattle in Guangtian village. He confessed to everything, telling them to hurry up. He understood this charade perfectly well. A few days later, the court was in session. We see the fat, greedy county magistrate sitting above, going through the motions before finally sentencing him to military exile. This was quite a surprise, as a death sentence is the norm for such crimes. Noticing his confusion, the magistrate spoke with an air of complete indifference. He explained that due to the recent tensions and war in the southern border, the government was showing mercy by converting death sentences into frontline service. Any crime with extenuating circumstances could be commuted. Chun-Yi realized that since he had taken the fall for so many unsolved cases, he had become quite useful, and so his circumstances were deemed extenuating. On the day he was to depart, Chun-Yun and Shin Qingshan arrived with their daughter to say their goodbyes. His sister's family watched him leave, her face a mask of tears. His young niece, not yet understanding the gravity of the situation, simply waved at him. She shouted for her uncle to come back soon to catch butterflies in the mountains. By the third year, at age 20, it was time for a new trait selection. The draw was a success. Congratulations were in order as he obtained the legendary trait, photographic memory, granting him a truly superhuman capacity for recollection. Everything he saw or heard would now be firmly etched in his mind. He chose to use this new gift to replace his previous trait, Wandering Dragon. He felt a twinge of regret for not experiencing that power, but duty called. 3 months later, he was escorted to the southern border army. As a convict soldier, he was assigned to the labor camp. The dozen or so soldiers in his tent were all criminals serving out their sentences just like him. They were a rough, unruly bunch, the kind of men who abandoned all discipline the moment the officers turned their backs. An old veteran named Lao Lu was the leader of this particular group. Seeing a newcomer arrive, he prepared to show Chun-Yi exactly who was in charge. He asked what the new guy was in for. When Chun-Yi calmly replied, murdering over 100 people, Lao Lu could only let out a skeptical scoff. He casually rifled through the luggage and found the official sentencing documents. After reading the contents, his attitude shifted instantly as he scrambled to his feet. Without saying another word, he began tidying up Chun-Yi's bed, making sure every corner was perfectly tucked in. It seems a reputation for mass murder carries some weight. Lao Lu even offered him an extra blanket for the night. The poor fellow whose blanket was forcibly taken could only offer a bitter, helpless smile. When the man asked how he was supposed to sleep, Lao Lu snapped that he was no longer the boss. From today on, there was only one leader in this tent, and that leader was Chun-Yi. By the 5th year, at age 22, he had fully adapted to the rigors of military life, practicing his martial arts whenever he found a spare moment. One day, while passing the recruit camp, we see him spot a man with a pockmarked face. Thanks to his photographic memory, he never forgets a face. He recognized the man instantly. He clearly remembered seeing him a year ago, which was quite a feat considering the circumstances. It was during a chaotic ambush by the southern border army while they were on the march. To be honest, most people would have been too panicked to notice. He began watching the man's every move, noting details as small as when he bathed or ate. After 10 days of careful observation, he finally discovered something. After finishing his training, the pockmarked man volunteered for gunpowder storage duty. In that moment, Chun-Yi understood exactly what the man was planning. That night, under the cover of darkness, the spy dismissed the other guards and slipped into the gunpowder depot alone. A bold move, certainly. An explosion here would throw the front lines into total chaos. Without gunpowder, their firearms would be rendered completely useless. The enemy army would then face no resistance. The spy quickly fashioned a fuse, his hands steady as he prepared to sabotage the entire camp. After lighting it, he ran to a safe distance and crouched down, waiting for the blast. He stared at the depot, waiting and waiting, yet nothing happened. Suddenly, a soft chuckle drifted through the air. A voice asked if he was wondering why the explosion was taking so long. Before the spy could even react, Chun-Yi shouted for the guards to seize the traitor. Lao Lu and the others immediately lunged forward. Inside the command tent, General Sun Shinjin was both surprised and pleased that a group of convict laborers had actually caught a spy. Sun Shinjin looked them over, though his voice held a hint of regret. He told them that while they had performed a great service, he couldn't officially credit them. He explained that because they were criminals sent there for their misdeeds, the law of the Great Qian forbade them from receiving official merit. Lao Lu dropped to his knees immediately. He pleaded with the general, claiming that many of them had been framed by corrupt officials back home. He spoke of how those local magistrates would seize property and hand out random sentences, preying on the poor who had no power to resist. The general cut him off, stating he wasn't their local magistrate and had no obligation to hear their grievances. A harsh reality, but a reality nonetheless. As Sun Qingin's voice rose, the pressure inside the command tent seemed to drop, leaving everyone present too terrified to even breathe. However, he told them not to feel mistreated. While he couldn't record their merit, he could still offer a reward, and with a wave of his hand, a lieutenant brought forward silver ingots. He offered them one each, asking if they wanted the reward, and here, the simulation pauses. It waits for a choice. 1. Take the money. 2. Refuse the reward out of loyalty to the country, claiming it is a citizen's duty. Or 3. Refuse the silver, but ask for something else. Since silver is useless in a simulation, the choice seems clear. Patriotism is hardly the priority here, so option 3, a sort of free-form choice that shapes the plot, is the most intriguing path. Perhaps there will be a pleasant surprise. He tells the general he doesn't want the silver, as such things are of little use to him. Sun Shinjin watches him with an amused smile and asks what he wants instead, to lead troops, but Chun-Yi knows nothing of war. He asks instead for elixirs to increase his cultivation. Sun Shinjin chuckles, curious now as to how he even recognized the spy. Realizing the general is suspicious, Chun-Yi decides that honesty is the best policy and explains he simply has an excellent memory. The general is skeptical, doubting anyone could remember trivial details like how many bites of porridge they took months ago. Chun-Yi answers immediately, 19 bites. He then proceeds to describe, with startling accuracy, the smallest details of the past. He even recalls the exact number of cloud patterns on the old clothes Sun Shinjin wore a year ago, finally proving his extraordinary gift. Delighted by this discovery of a natural genius, the general claps him on the shoulder and hands him an official appointment. From that day on, he is part of the military staff. Though his merits can't be recorded, his service will be compensated differently. Every bit of effort will be traded for the elixirs and spirit stones he desires. It is an arrangement he accepts with great pleasure. With a steady supply of resources to aid his cultivation, he is satisfied, even though the military-grade elixirs are of lower quality. They contain toxins that a normal martial artist couldn't purge, but while others see him consuming them recklessly, they don't know his secret. When the simulation ends, he only inherits the cultivation level, not the toxins. And so, in the days that follow, he thrives within the army. His photographic memory makes him an invaluable asset, turning him into the camp's most sought-after man. Every day, officers from various camps line up just to seek his help with their problems, treating him like a powerful living database. He organizes every scrap of data and intelligence across the entire camp, essentially acting as a walking AI, which is quite impressive, really. Sun Shinjin is a man of his word. Since Chun-Yi is so useful, but his merits can't be recorded, the general simply showers him with rewards. Spirit stones, elixirs, spiritual tools, and wealth flow to him in a never-ending supply. Notably, Sun Shinjin never offers women as rewards. Unlike other commanders, he doesn't view them as spoils of war. We see Chun-Yi fiddling with spirit stones like walnuts, tossing them aside once the essence has been completely drained. He chews on elixirs meant to boost cultivation speed as if they were mere snacks, a luxury few could ever imagine. When he has a free moment, he browses the daily military reports, which serves as one of his few forms of entertainment. He hands out spiritual tools like toys, leading a crowd of soldiers to jokingly call him their benefactor. And so it goes. He has somehow turned a harsh military life into a comfortable vacation. By the 15th year, he is 32 years old. A decade has passed in the blink of an eye, and while he remains in the army, his magnetic bar system continues to function steadily. They are all useless white bars, but thanks to the massive amount of elixirs and stones, his cultivation has soared like a rocket. He has reached the peak of the 9th stage of body refining, standing right at the threshold of the next realm. However, that final step, he has been trying to break through for over 2 years without success. Meanwhile, the southern border's Great Shur Kingdom has been attacking relentlessly. Each assault is more violent than the last. Now, Sun Shinjin and his remaining 20,000 troops find themselves in a dire situation. They are besieged by the Great Shur Kingdom's barbarian elephant army in a small fortress city, protected only by high walls and deep moats. It is a strong defensive position with plenty of supplies. Inside the general's manor, the officers are gathered in full armor. They surround a sand table to discuss the war. Vice General Zhang, the most hot-headed of the group, repeatedly asks for permission to fight. He complains that the barbarians are insulting them outside the gates and offers a military pledge to win. Hearing this, Jinny frowns. The enemy's elephant cavalry carry 15-meter-long spears and ride 6-meter-tall beasts, even though there are only a few hundred of them. But that is enough to crush tens of thousands of our infantry. Have our soldiers not suffered enough at their hands already? As a heavy atmosphere of despair spreads through the room, we see Chun-Yi calmly waving his feather fan and offering a different perspective. He notes that the Xiong troops lingering under the walls have dwindled lately, and even those who come to shout insults look quite weary. The war beast seems sluggish. He suspects these exotic creatures cannot adapt to the Central Plains climate and have likely fallen ill. Sun Shinjin adds a word of caution, suggesting this might be a trap to lure them out, as the Great Shur army is currently overextended. Their supply lines are stretched thin deep within Suzhou. As long as the garrison holds its ground, the enemy will eventually be forced to retreat. While they are busy discussing how to raid the enemy's grain routes, a soldier suddenly bursts in with an urgent report. The Imperial Court has issued a gold medal decree, ordering Commander Sun Shinjin to immediately lead the Suzhou border army out to battle. They are commanded to reclaim lost territory at once. As the soldier presents the crimson token, Sun Shinjin can only let out a heavy sigh. He takes it, noting that this is already the 10th gold medal urging them into battle. Beside him, the vice general snorts in derision. He wonders what the emperor is thinking, demanding they fight while sending absolutely no reinforcements. Sun Shinjin sighs again, looking weary. Corrupt officials are clouding the emperor's judgment. His Majesty likely believes the loss of Suzhou cities was due to the border army's cowardice. Once again, Sun Shinjin chooses to disobey the imperial order. He is caught in a painful dilemma. He wishes to be a loyal subject, but he cannot simply watch his brothers-in-arms march to their deaths, though he is a powerful martial artist in his prime. Strands of white hair have begun to creep across his head. This agonizing stalemate finally comes to an end 2 months later. An imperial envoy arrives at the pass. Interestingly, when the besieging enemy heard the envoy was coming to force Sun Shinjin to fight, they actually used a grand sedan chair to carry him straight to the gates. After the envoy enters the pass, things get tense. The defenders, knowing knowing exactly why he's here, treat him with cold indifference, which infuriates the official, who claims the enemy has better manners. That very day, the envoy reads the imperial edict. If Sun Qingjin does not march out now, the entire border army will be charged with treason. As night falls, we find Chun-Yi in the study alongside Sun Qingjin's vice general and several of his most trusted confidants. Having been summoned, we see Sun Qingjin looking at the group with a complex gaze. After a long silence, he finally speaks of tomorrow. He plans to open the south gate and lead the elite troops himself, knowing the Great Shire army has offered a massive bounty for his head. As long as he appears, the enemy will surely swarm him, allowing the remaining soldiers and the townspeople to escape through the north gate. Vice General Li stands up in a fury, asking why the general remains loyal to an emperor who is essentially forcing him to die. He urges a rebellion, and the other confidants quickly agree, while Chun-Yi simply watches from the side without saying a word. Sun Qingjin turns to him, asking why he is silent. Chun-Yi can only offer a bitter smile, knowing the general's stubborn nature. He knows the general would rather die than be a traitor, but he suggests there is no need to march towards certain death. He hints there are other paths, perhaps involving the imperial envoy, but Sun Qingjin waves his hand to cut him off immediately. The general's mind is made up. Some things must be done, even if they seem impossible. That night, Chun-Yi's thoughts are racing. Unable to sleep, he gazes at the moon, marveling at how real this world feels as he looks out toward the enemy camp. The Great Shire army is resting, preparing for tomorrow's final battle. Even the usually violent war elephants are eerily quiet tonight. They are silently gathering their strength, and Chun-Yi realizes just how much he admires a man like Sun Qingjin. The general has maintained iron discipline and brilliant tactics, leading a border army that received absolutely no reinforcements from the capital. At the cost of 80,000 lives, they held back 1 million invaders and took over 300,000 enemy heads. Quite a feat. But tomorrow marks the final moment for this heroic commander, and with that thought, sleep becomes an impossible luxury. The next day, the south gate swings wide. Sun Qingjin appears in full general's armor, wielding a massive spear while mounted on a fierce red stallion. With 800 elite guards behind him, he shouts to the invaders that he is here to fight whoever dares to face him. He demands they spare the civilians in the city, and then, without a second thought, he charges forward into the fray. His guards follow close behind as they crash into the enemy lines. As a high-level martial artist, he faces the vast army with ease. He carves through the ranks like a god of war reborn, but soon, several powerful figures emerge from the enemy's side to meet him. As Sun Qingjin clashes with several martial artists of his own rank, the sheer force of their colliding techniques creates a devastating shockwave. The residual power sweeps in all directions with such intensity that ordinary soldiers find it impossible to even draw near the battlefield. Taking advantage of the weakened defense at the north gate, 20,000 soldiers strip off their armor and change into common civilian clothes. Blending in with the townspeople, they follow Sun Qingjin's final orders to evacuate through the north gate. Once outside, a soldier asks a question. He asks Chun-Yi what the next step is now that they have escaped, unaware that the general's plan was much simpler than they imagined. There is no next step, only survival. Chun-Yi remains silent, and in that heavy quiet, the soldiers slowly begin to realize the truth. A soldier named Li Ergu laughs bitterly, marveling at the fact that a great general is currently sacrificing his life to act as their shield. The sentiment shifts instantly. If the general won't leave, they won't either. They tell the civilians to keep running while they reach for their weapons. The soldiers choose to turn back. Even as their commanders shout reprimands and draw their execution swords to enforce the retreat, no one listens. Eventually, even those commanders are swept up in the emotion and join the charge back into the fray. The Suzhou border army lives and dies together. Their passion ignites something in Chun-Yi as well. He tosses aside his fan and draws his sword, decided that some things are worth the sacrifice. But just as he prepares to charge back into the battle, he is intercepted by two captains, the personal guards of Sun Qingjin himself. Without a word, they grab him. It seems the general anticipated this and ordered them to forcibly remove the strategist if he tried anything reckless. These two captains are powerful spirit realm experts. They carry Chun-Yi away like a helpless child, effectively extinguishing his heroic fire before it could start. Half a day later, after traveling over 30 miles, the sound of a familiar laugh reaches his ears. He looks up to see his old friend, Lao Lu. We move to the 16th year. Chun-Yi is now 33 years old, and it is time once again to draw a new destiny trait. The draw is successful, Spider Sense. This Jade tier trait causes his hair to stand on end and his skin to crawl whenever danger is near. He decides to adjust his traits, choosing to replace his old, hard work trait with this new, life-saving Spider Sense. Relying on this newfound intuition to perceive threats before they strike, he and Lao Lu spend their days hiding and dodging the enemy. They narrowly manage to escape the battlefield with their lives, but the Suzhou border army, his former comrades, has been completely wiped out. We see that with no civilians left to protect and Sun Qingjin finally fallen, the Dashi army faces no more obstacles as they drive deep into the territory. They swiftly conquer 31 cities in Suzhou. Witnessing this devastation, Chun-Yi feels a profound grief, yet he remains utterly powerless to stop it. He can only continue his own path of martial arts, and since Lao Lu has nowhere else to go, he chooses to follow along into the 17th year. Now 34 years old and searching for a martial arts sect, the two of them decide to take a detour to visit Lao Lu's old hometown. Staring at the crumbling ruins of his family home, Lao Lu learns that shortly after he was conscripted as the only able-bodied man, tragedy struck. His parents were preyed upon and left with nothing, and his younger sister was sold to a brothel, dying only a few years later. On that day, the usually carefree and shiftless Lao Lu vanished for 3 days. Knowing his friend was drowning in sorrow, Chun-Yi chose not to disturb him. While waiting in a nearby town to gather information, he sits in a tea house, listening to the local scholars and poets discuss the state of the world. It seems the fatuous emperor of Dakian still believes Sun Qingjin is alive, hiding somewhere to avoid battle, and has even issued a nationwide arrest warrant. He has ordered the Dragon Guard to hunt down a dead man, even as news of the Dashi kingdom seizing Suzhou spreads across the land. Seeing the chaos, the various nations of the southern border have begun mobilizing their armies, eager to claim a piece of the fertile central plains. Sensing the impending disaster, the imperial court decides to marry off Princess Baiwa, renowned for her beauty and martial talent, to the king of Dashi. To be honest, sacrificing a princess and ceding more of Suzhou's land just to stabilize the situation seems like a desperate move at best. The tea house owner, a man of strong character, is so infuriated by the court's humiliating surrender of national sovereignty that he begins to mourn openly. He offers free meals to everyone as the sound of weeping fills the tea house. Chun-Yi sighs, realizing that the great Dakian empire is truly broken. Like a shattered bowl, the nation is falling apart, leaving us to wonder where Chun-Yi will go in this era of wandering and instability. Option 1. Gather a following and start a rebellion. With his extraordinary skills, he could certainly carve out a legacy for himself. Option 2. Continue searching for a martial arts sect while traveling the world. Option 3. Find a quiet place to farm and settle down. Deep down, he knows that with his current strength, rebellion is just a death sentence, so he immediately rules out the first option. While the third option is safer for a long life, the second option might just give him the chance to obtain the legendary giant spirit pill. He chooses the second path, and so the simulation continues. He no longer concerns himself with the crumbling Dakian state. His only goal now is to live as long as he possibly can. He hopes to gather more traits and find a sect willing to offer him the legendary giant spirit pill. Then, early one morning, Lao Lu finally returns after 3 days, looking as though he has aged 20 years in a single weekend. Together, they resume their journey. We see them traveling across the Central Plains, visiting various martial arts sections. Deep down, he knows the major sects will never accept a man in his 30s, especially one who hasn't even reached the giant spirit realm yet. Instead, he targets smaller startup sects that are desperate for manpower and still have a few resources left. By the 18th year, at age 35, he has knocked on many doors, only to have every single one of them slammed in his face. After being kicked out yet again, rather rudely, we might add, he brushes the dust from his robes and trudges down the mountain, looking quite defeated. At the foot of the mountain lies a small village, but as they draw near, the heavy, metallic scent of blood fills the air. Upon entering, they find that every single villager has been slaughtered, their bodies left scattered in the dirt. It is a hauntingly familiar sight. Just yesterday, the village had been peaceful when they stopped to rest. This is the 4th time this year he has stumbled upon such a massacre. It is almost as if a professional band of killers is shadowing them, leaving a trail of corpses wherever they choose to walk. Curiously, his spider sense never once warned him of danger. Lao Lu, visibly trembling, reaches out to his friend. He tugs at Chun Yi's sleeve, whispering that they should leave before the killers return. Chun Yi quietly agrees, and they slip away into the shadows. He wonders what kind of world this is, where the common folk are given no room to breathe. After all, his own family was lost to a similar mystery. Looking at the carnage, he can't help but feel a pang of shared grief. He begins to wonder if the monsters who destroyed Luoding village are the very same ones responsible for the blood on the ground today. We move forward to the 23rd year, when Chun Yi is now 40. He still hasn't given up on finding a master, though with every passing year, the chances of a sect welcoming an aging student grow slim. To make matters worse, the side effects of the many pills he consumed in the army are starting to catch up with him. The toxins trapped in his body have begun to sap his vitality, leaving him with a persistent, hollow cough that he cannot shake. He decides to settle near Baiyun County to open a martial arts hall, hoping to pass on the techniques he learned from the general's elite guards. We see them arrive at the Linfeng Pavilion, where the gates stand wide open in a heavy silence, and that all too familiar scent of blood wafts through the air. Upon closer inspection, every single disciple inside has been slaughtered. Overwhelmed with shock, Chun Yi looks around, trying to make sense of the carnage. He feels as though these quiet mountains are hiding an endless, murderous intent. Suddenly, Lao Lu comes running out of a room, looking quite excited. He is clutching 2 blue pills in his hands. "Boss Chun, look, is this the giant spirit pill?" he asks, handing one over for inspection. Chun Yi holds it up against the sunlight to check. It is indeed the legendary pill. Lao Lu is ecstatic, suggesting they each take one immediately. The old man never imagined he'd have a chance to reach the giant spirit realm in this lifetime. Lao Lu is a martial artist too, but his talent is limited. Like Chun Yi, he has been stuck at the 9th stage of body refining for years. He has wandered for decades just for this pill. At this moment, Chun Yi can no longer worry about the corpses surrounding them. He only wants to swallow the pill and break through. After consuming the giant spirit pill, he immediately begins his cultivation. Under the pill's influence, his connection to the essence of heaven and earth becomes incredibly sharp. As his internal energy circulates, his blood surges and the world's essence pours into his body. Finally, the breakthrough he sought is within reach. Even the leader of the small Blackstone gang is only at the 9th stage. Once he inherits this power, he tells himself he can go wherever he pleases. He could come and go as he likes, even through the thick of battle. The end of the Blackstone gang is near, and so the simulation continues. After 2 simulations totaling 100 years, he successfully reaches the giant spirit realm. The probability of drawing high-quality traits has now increased. He can now equip 2 additional traits. After the breakthrough, his racing mind slowly begins to cool down and find its focus. And that is when he suddenly realizes there is a glaring problem. "Lao Lu, how did you recognize the giant spirit pill? This should be your first time seeing one." Lao Lu remains still, eyes closed in meditation. The feeling of unease grows. "Lao Lu, I never told you what those pills look like." Under the weight of his questioning, Lao Lu suddenly snaps his eyes open. In that instant, the spider sense screams a warning, and the hair on the back of Chun Yi's neck stands up. A cold shiver runs down his spine as he takes several steps back. Lao Lu's lips curl into a strange, inexplicable smile. "I didn't recognize the pill," the old man says, pointing to the corpses scattered across the floor, "but I could always ask them." And finally, he understands. In utter disbelief, Chun Yi asks if it was him who slaughtered the Linfeng Pavilion and those villages they passed. But how could he? How could he possibly possess such power? Lao Lu simply replies that he didn't have it before, not until 6 years ago. That was when he obtained this, a revelation that changes everything we thought we knew about the old man. A truly eerie black mist begins to emanate from Lao Lu's body, and a banner billowing with dark smoke appears behind him. It is the 10,000 soul banner. We recall the first simulation where, in this same year, a demonic practitioner appeared in Baiyun County. That practitioner had slaughtered the town and even caused the death of Chun Yi's daughter. To be honest, the truth is far worse than imagined. He never would have guessed that the monster was Lao Lu, who now gently strokes the banner with a terrifying affection. With an expression of pure obsession, he notes that even Boss Chun recognizes this treasure. Its reputation, it seems, precedes it. Thinking of the slaughtered villages along their journey, Chun Yi demands to know why. Those villagers had no grudge against him. Lao Lu couldn't care less, his eyes gleaming with a bloodthirsty light. As long as he feeds the banner, it rewards him. The banner feeds back into his cultivation. Despite his poor talent, he reached the soul-breaking realm in just 6 short years. Lao Lu stops hiding his power, and the aura of the soul-breaking realm is fully revealed. It is a suffocating display of strength. The pressure makes it hard for Chun Yi to breathe. He can only manage a bitter smile, telling the old man to look at his own face. He warns him that the banner isn't helping him, it's using him. It's an evil thing. But as he speaks, the red light in Lao Lu's eyes fades. A flicker of clarity returns to the old man, but the banner suddenly shakes violently. The black mist comes alive, surging toward his face. It crawls into his eyes and nostrils. Once the darkness enters his body, Lao Lu seems to become an entirely different person. His voice becomes raspy, sounding like thousands of souls screaming in his throat. He asks if power doesn't always require a price. Chun Yi asks if he is even Lao Lu anymore, calling him a truly terrifying creature. To the old man, that is exactly the point. He believes one must be feared to avoid being bullied. He rails against a world where the law-abiding are framed by officials. He speaks of his kind family being devoured by a mob, and then asks, what of the respected General Sun Chingon? He rants that even the general was hounded to death, so why should anyone care about the lives of villagers? To him, surviving and growing stronger is the only natural law. It is the only path that matters. Lao Lu begins to close in, step by step, until Chun Yi is backed into a corner with nowhere left to run. Deep down, he wants to fight back, but under the suffocating suppression of the 10,000 soul banner, the energy within his body refuses to stir. He simply cannot mobilize his power. Lao Lu reaches out a hand, calling him Brother Chun, and promising not to hurt him, recalling how Chun Yi helped him in the camp. He claims to be a man who repays his debts, offering to share the power of his great treasure with him. A tempting offer, if it weren't so terrifying. But Chun Yi's instincts are screaming at him. He knows, with absolute certainty, that the old man is lying through his teeth. In a desperate move, he pulls out a red iron pellet, one of the many spiritual items Sun Chingon had gifted him. It is known as a smoke cloud pearl. He slams the pearl against the ground with all his might, and instantly, a thick, heavy smoke begins to fill the entire Linfeng Pavilion. At the same time, a divine breeze emerges from the pearl and wraps around his feet, drastically increasing his speed as he attempts attempts to vanish into the haze. He runs at full speed, hoping the smoke will blind Lao Lu, but the old man merely scoffs, asking if he truly thinks he can escape. Without even blinking, Lao Lu waves the 10,000 soul banner, and a dense black mist instantly floods the entire building, swallowing the smoke whole. Tendrils of darkness coil around Chun-Yi like snakes. No matter how he struggles, it is utterly futile. He can feel his very life force beginning to drain away. He is filled with a bitter unwillingness to die like this, but his strength is failing. And then, just as all seems lost, something happens. Several beams of sword light slash through the air from outside the pavilion, scattering the black mist. Chun-Yi falls heavily to the floor, free but broken. He is badly injured, unable to even crawl. A wave of intense exhaustion washes over him, making his eyelids feel as heavy as lead. Before losing consciousness, he catches a glimpse of a familiar figure. He remains in a coma for 7 days before finally regaining enough energy to wake up. We find him in a small wooden cabin nestled in the forest. The surrounding scenery is as beautiful as a painting, and the air is crisp and fresh. It is a truly soul-soothing place. He hears the voice of a woman nearby and realizes she must be the one who has been tending to his wounds. She is the one who pulled him back from the gates of death several times. He begins to offer his thanks to his benefactor, but stops mid-sentence. It is Su Linglong. She is overjoyed to see him awake, exclaiming with relief that her savior has finally returned to the land of the living. At this point, Chun-Yi is utterly bewildered, wondering why on earth she is calling him her benefactor. Su Linglong begins to explain her side of the story. She recounts her experiences over the years, starting back when she was abandoned in Baiyun County and their paths first crossed. For some reason, he knew things. He knew her name and even warned her to watch out for the second-in-command of Flying Tiger Fortress. It was a warning Su Linglong took to heart. She remained vigilant and eventually discovered that the second-in-command was indeed a traitor, secretly conspiring with the government. Unfortunately, there was a problem. Her father, Su Hu, was far too stubborn. No matter how much she tried to convince him, he simply refused to believe his lieutenant would ever betray the stronghold. When the government troops finally arrived to wipe them out, Su Linglong was the only one prepared. She had already positioned herself outside the main camp. She managed to escape through a secret passage and eventually made her way to Sanjiang County. Later, she was discovered by the local Qingkong sect. They realized she possessed a mid-tier spiritual root and took her in as a disciple. 7 days ago, the situation changed again. All the sects in Sanjiang joined forces to hunt down the demon Lao Lu, and they happened to rescue him. She feels her debt is finally repaid. She asks what his plans are for the future. He is left with 3 choices: find a small town to open a martial arts school and fulfill his comrades' wishes. Second, continue traveling to seek out new opportunities. Or third, track down Lao Lu to seize that magnificent 10,000 soul banner for himself. He can't believe he ran into Su Linglong again. To be honest, it feels like the system is doing this on purpose. It was one thing in the simulations, but in reality, he has no desire to become deeply entangled with Su Linglong's complicated life. In previous simulations, he had already expressed a desire to fulfill his fallen comrades' last wishes. Besides, his current condition is quite poor. After the ordeal with Lao Lu and the banner, his body is in a fragile state. Continuing to wander the world would be nothing but a struggle. Retiring early might actually allow him to live a few years longer and collect more traits. And so, the simulation proceeds. He bids farewell to Su Linglong and settles in the nearby town of Maku. A month later, the Chinen Martial Arts Hall is officially established. After all, the techniques he plans to teach are the very ones Sun Shingon gave him years ago, by the 27th year of his life. At 44 years old, he teaches without holding anything back. Because his fees are low, many students come from far and wide to learn from him. The school is thriving. One day, while taking a stroll through the streets, he spots 2 filthy beggars in the distance. Taking a closer look, we see that one of the beggars, a chubby fellow with wide-set eyes, is clearly none other than his old friend Dachuan. He never expected to see Dachuan here, much less the little girl by his side, who turns out to be his sister's daughter, Nan Nan. Chun-Yi urgently asks what happened, why they are here, and where his sister and brother-in-law are. Dachuan, however, was never the brightest. Overwhelmed by the rapid questions, Dachuan just scratches his head in confusion, but the clever Nan Nan steps in to explain the situation. It turns out, not long after Chun-Yi was conscripted, Shen Qingshan was framed as a murderer. He fought back with everything he had to resist the arrest. He managed to buy enough time for Chun-Yi's sister to escape. In her desperation, she could only entrust Nan Nan to Dachuan's care. She then ran deep into the alleys alone, taking one last look back before disappearing. Within moments, a group of pursuers followed her tracks. Though Dachuan is simple-minded, even he knew they couldn't stay in Baiyun County, so he fled with Nan Nan to keep her safe. They wandered all the way to Maku Town, and now that they found him, we can say their days of suffering have finally come to an end. The two settle into the martial arts hall, but Chun-Yi's anger refuses to subside. He wonders why the magistrate was so obsessed with destroying Shen Qingshan. He decides that when his life is nearing its end, he will investigate the whole truth. In his 28th year, at 45 years old, he draws a new trait: success. He gains demonic aura detection, a green tier ability that makes supernatural traces visible. Wherever a demon passes, it must leave a trail, and now that aura is visualized before his eyes. In his 29th year, at age 46, he prepares to draw another trait from the system. The draw is a success. The seed grows bitter with age. This means his cultivation speed, physical strength, and blood energy will not decline as his body ages. Instead, the older he gets, the faster he cultivates, up to 5 times faster. Another great pull, and an epic one at that. Because of his previous ordeal with the 10,000 soul banner, he is aging much faster than a normal person. He already meets the conditions for this new trait, so he uses it to replace Serious Punch. It was a wise trade, to be honest. Dachuan and his niece have lived here for over 2 years now. Dachuan helps with chores every day, doing whatever small tasks he can manage. Nan Nan, meanwhile, practices martial arts alongside the other apprentices. To his surprise, he discovers she possesses a high-tier spiritual root. We see him contact Su Linglong to recommend Nan Nan to the Qingtang sect, hoping she might achieve greatness in martial arts. Before she leaves, he gives Nan Nan a formal name, Shin Siqing. She tells him to take care, noting that his cough has grown much worse over the last 2 years. She insists he take the medicinal soup Linglong sends, and not to mind the bitterness. Even as she departs, Siqing can't stop worrying about him. In his 33rd year, at age 50, the bad news arrives. Though he is only 50, his physical functions resemble those of an 80-year-old. The good news, however, is that his seed grows bitter. Trait accelerates his cultivation even more. With enough effort, there will surely be a harvest. Under the dual effects of his unique traits, his martial arts realm has steadily improved over these passing years. He has recently broken through to the 3rd level of the Julin realm. In his 34th year, at age 51, he hears some troubling news. War has broken out in the south again. The stability of the southern border, once secured through a political marriage, is in turmoil once more. An empress who unified 100 southern nations has risen to power and begun a counter-offensive against the central plains. In his 38th year, at age 55, his health continues to decline. We can see this clearly because his cultivation speed is becoming faster and faster. He has already reached the 5th level. The maximum boost from his seed grows bitter trait, ironically enough, triggers when he is closest to death. Knowing his time is short, he decides it is time to return to Baiyun County and demand an explanation. He brings back Serious Punch, replacing his effort-based trait. With Serious Punch, when he uses no weapons or skills, only basic attacks, his power is something else entirely. His strength increases tenfold. He then replaces his photographic memory with the Badminton Master trait. Yes, a strange choice, perhaps. perhaps. This trait doubles the strength of his right arm, or his left if he were southpaw. The next day, he arrives back in Bayun County. Beneath the surface of peace, dark shadows are swirling. Thanks to his demonic aura detection, the hidden evil is now visible to his eyes. He discovers that Bayun County is drifting with demonic energy everywhere. He wonders what the local Demon Slayer division is actually doing. Are they simply allowing monsters to enter the city? As he approaches the magistrate's office, his killing intent immediately draws the guard's attention. But these ordinary men are no match for a master of his caliber. This is the first stop on his final path of reckoning. Can you feel the tension rising? Even among the constables and the head catcher of the yamen, there are martial artists waiting for him. The head catcher's cultivation is close to his own, holding his ground well, while constables fire crossbows from the shadows to distract him. The head catcher strikes with sudden force and disarms him, thinking victory is certain, unaware that basic attacks are actually his greatest strength. The man even relies on his armored plate, foolishly attempting to withstand a direct punch to the chest. With badminton master and serious punch stacked together, he delivers a blow 20 times more powerful than a normal strike. The head catcher is sent to meet his ancestors on the spot. To be honest, he never stood a chance. He doesn't recognize the new magistrate, but he certainly remembers the father. It seems the position was inherited, a family of well-connected bureaucrats. The previous gluttonous magistrate is dead, and his son has grown into the opposite extreme, a man of skin and bones. He asks about the old case involving Qingshan. The magistrate doesn't remember him, but he remembers Qingshan very clearly. Years ago, Qingshan fought to the death and took the magistrate's father with him. This son, however, is a spineless coward. After 13 of his ribs are shattered, the magistrate finally confesses the truth. There are demons committing crimes in Bayun County. The magistrate reclassified demon killings as human murders, but Qingshan noticed the discrepancies and kept investigating. That is why he had to be eliminated. He finds himself increasingly confused. Why would anyone cover for a demon? Because of Feng Yuqing. But before the name can even settle, the man himself arrives at the office. Just like years ago, he descends from the sky. With a flick of his fingers, 4 pillars of light shoot into the heavens. The entire magistrate's office is sealed by an array. A terrified constable asks what Chief Feng thinks he is doing. The guards are paralyzed with fear. Feng Yuqing is the top master of Bayun County, with power beyond their comprehension. Capturing a man like Chun Yi shouldn't require such a massive array. Feng Yuqing simply sneers, saying there is someone to blame. He blames the magistrate for his loose tongue. A flash of white light streaks out, instantly piercing the magistrate's head. The constables descend into chaos, but the office is sealed. They cannot escape and are slaughtered one by Feng Yuqing. Soon, only he and Feng Yuqing remain. On Feng's face, dark, demonic veins begin to surface, revealing his true nature. Staring at the demonic transformation of Feng Yuqing, we see that the chief still remembers him, even though Chun Yi is now well into his old age. Knowing his life is nearing its end, and that he is no match for this monster, he calmly sits on the steps, wondering how the head of the demon-slaying division could actually be a protector for the demons. Seeing that he has no intention of resisting, Feng Yuqing isn't in any particular hurry to strike. He explains that if demons cause trouble for too long, the imperial court blames the local division, but those beasts simply cannot survive without eating people. It makes them restless, so he came up with a plan. Reclassify demon killings as human murders to keep the peace. To be honest, it was a cold, calculated logic. He would simply frame a few unlucky souls, and the problem was solved. But what could the demon race possibly offer him in exchange? The answer is simple: power. Feng Yuqing's voice suddenly shifts, sounding like thousands of people screaming at once as he admits that, like Chun Yi, he was born with low-grade potential. He speaks of how difficult it is for those with poor talent to practice martial arts, but the demons can refine blood demon pills to help him break his natural limits. Perhaps because they share the same humble beginnings, Feng Yuqing is willing to say a few more words, telling Chun Yi not to blame him for what comes next. In a world where martial arts are supreme, he claims he'd be nothing but meat on a chopping block if he didn't do this. Chun Yi simply raises a middle finger in silent defiance. He silently tells him they will fight again in the next life. And with that, the simulation ends. The evaluation is in photographic memory and the act star. The soul is shaken and the empire is restless, carrying old dreams under a setting sun. His white hair shines through the darkness of the night. Congratulations are in order as we see the rewards. First, 39 years of travel memories are now his to keep. Second, he gains the cultivation of the 5th level of the Bell Realm. Third, he receives 39 traits, including photographic memory, and the older, the better. Fourth, he masters his grandfather's Zhengyang art, reaches proficiency in the heart-hunting internal art, and masters the burning cloud hand technique. He also gains mastery of the Shun family spear. The system rewards are credited to him instantly, filling him with newfound strength. A new guided mission appears while the simulation is on cooldown for 1 year. He is given a choice to move forward. By completing the following guided mission, he can directly earn another simulation opportunity. The task is to leave the Blackstone gang. He must take the Chun back to his old home in Bayun County. The rewards include 1 additional simulation attempt. He will also receive 1 high-quality trait draw and 10 shadow spirit pills. It seems our journey is taking us back to where it all began. A knock sounds at the door as a voice calls out, asking instructor Chun to join the brothers for a late-night snack. When told it's authentic Tenia beef noodles, he simply replies that he doesn't eat beef. A strange preference, perhaps. The massive commotion soon draws the attention of nearby patrolling guards, who rush over to see what's happening. The excuse given is absurd. It's the beef. Apparently, he just really doesn't like beef. Dismissing the nonsense, he tells the guards not to panic, claiming the man was a spy and leading them toward the warehouse. He claims he interrogated the spy and learned of accomplices already inside the warehouse, planning to steal all the silver today. Upon hearing the money might be stolen, the patrol captain becomes frantic. After all, if the silver vanishes, no one gets paid next month. By the time the group reaches the warehouse, they find the doors wide open with a dozen gang members hauling boxes outside. Seeing this scene, the patrol captain loses his temper instantly, convinced he has caught the thieves red-handed. He brands them spies and orders a man named Guzi to notify the sect leader while the rest prepare to slaughter the traitors. The confused workers look around, explaining they were only bringing out old archives and books to dry in the sun. They were merely trying to prevent mold, but before they can finish the explanation, the patrol's blades are already at their throats. The warehouse manager roars in anger and begins trading blows with the patrol captain. While they are busy fighting, we see our protagonist move. He strolls casually into the warehouse, grabbing a piece of cloth to fashion a makeshift sack for his loot. He begins stuffing the shelves gold and jewels inside, knowing this wealth was squeezed from the blood and sweat of the poor. He decides to act on behalf of heaven, ensuring this wealth, taken from the people, finally returns to the people, or at least to him. Outside, the 4th master arrives at the warehouse gates with a crowd, finding the manager and the patrol captain locked in a deadly struggle. Watching them fight to the death, his simple mind struggles to process the chaos unfolding before him. As both sides shout their conflicting stories, he has a sudden stroke of genius and tells them all to shut up. Claiming no one can fool Shirlausi, he decides that if he kills everyone present, the problem will simply disappear. The patrol captain roars that Shirlausi is a complete fool, while the warehouse manager looks like he's finally lost all hope. Joining the Blackstone gang was clearly a stroke of terrible luck. He decides to just let them fight it out. It's a classic case of dog eat dog until something unexpected catches our protagonist's eye. He spots a mask that looks hauntingly familiar. It's stark white with a black flame pattern etched right between the eyes. Isn't this the very same mask mask worn by the group that slaughtered Luoding village? Meanwhile, outside, Shirlausi has finished off both groups. He boasts that no one can fool him. Just as our protagonist approaches and asks if he recognizes the mask, he shakes the mask in front of him, but Shirlausi only spares it a glance before his eyes lock onto the heavy sack of loot. Instructor Chun. He demands to know what this means. Even as the fourth master, he only dares to steal a little at a time. How could Chun take so much? Seeing such blatant stupidity, he can't help but laugh. Honestly, this man's IQ wouldn't even earn him a seat at the table with Dachuan. The Blackstone lackeys raise their clubs, shouting for him to drop the wealth they worked so hard to squeeze out of others. Tired of the noise, he reveals his soul-destroying realm cultivation, letting a surge of powerful spiritual energy erupt that leaves them terrified. They don't even have the courage to resist. With a casual strike, he cuts them all down before asking again if he recognizes the mask. Realizing he is no match for him, Shirlausi adopts an expression of absolute sincerity. Big brother Chun, I really don't know this mask. Could you ask me about something I actually recognize? I promise I won't lie. Well, then he's useless. He decides it's time for Shirlausi to go. It seems if he wants to learn the origin of this mask, he'll have to find the sect leader, Shirsan. On his way, more reckless gang members try to block his path. He simply keeps his hands in his pockets, walking as if they don't exist. When Shirsan sees the spiritual energy radiating from him, any thought of resistance vanishes instantly. Wait, Hiro-chun, if you'd said you were in the soul-destroying realm, you could have taken anything. I'd even give you my position as sect leader. He claims he'd even work as his laborer, wondering why it had to come to this. Our protagonist simply asks if he recognizes the mask. Shirsan starts nodding vigorously before even seeing the object, but once he gets a clear look, he freezes in pure shock. He asks if Shirsan has worn it, or if he knows who did and where. Shirsan can only stammer, sweat pouring down his face. After a long silence, under the crushing pressure of death, Shirsan's mind finally kicks into gear and he remembers. He explains that on the day they floated downstream, there was another person, and that person was wearing this very mask. The mask was nearly indestructible, seemingly made of spiritual energy, so he kept it. As for the man, he was cremated. Just like that, the lead goes cold. Our protagonist is momentarily consumed by rage. He gathers his spiritual energy, ready to deliver a serious blow to Shirsan, when the man screams out another clue. Shirsan bellows that the man was over 6 feet tall with thick joints, clearly a martial artist, and his fatal wound was right in the chest. Suddenly, hearing the splash of water, he realizes that Shirsan has vanished. In just that brief moment, the man made his move. He has already swum to the middle of the river. His skills in the water are truly no joke. Chani, you just wait. While Shirsan is still shouting threats, our protagonist is already mourning for him. Thanks to his special vision, he can clearly see a dark aura. Something is moving rapidly toward the sect leader. It seems the river demon decided not to wait for a formal offering and is taking its own meal. By the time he snaps back to reality, the sun is fully up. He picks up Dachuan, and they enjoy a delicious meal of mutton buns, paired with 2 bowls of soy milk. It's a truly wonderful morning. Afterward, they change into clean clothes and set off for Bayun County. 3 days later, he and Dachuan reach the borders of Bayun. As they cross a mountain ridge, they run into an old acquaintance. It's that familiar, barrel-shaped woman again. This mountain is mine. This tree is mine, she shouts. If you want to pass, you must pay the toll. Seeing that she still can't even get her opening lines right, he can't help but laugh. He asks why it's her again, but Su Linglong is confused, wondering why he said again. Not wanting to waste words, he simply releases his spiritual energy. With the power of the soul-destroying realm on display, the path is cleared instantly. These bandits know when to quit and immediately drop to their knees for mercy. He has no interest in dealing with them. After all, the authorities will be coming to wipe them out soon anyway. But then, he spots something strange. The leader pointed to a random bystander and told him to come over. Terrified by the man's imposing presence, the poor soul trembled as he approached, stammering out a nervous, "Great hero, what do you need from me?" The leader simply asked why there was red in his hair. It was a strange sight indeed. The man's hair was mostly black, but those odd streaks of red were impossible to ignore. It turns out there was a single tuft of red hair right in the middle. The man explained he was once a disciple of the Chishin sect, practicing a technique called New Fire. Apparently, the deeper one's mastery of this technique, the more red hair appears on their head. He had heard that the sect elders had reached full completion. Each of them supposedly sports a full head of flowing red hair. Chishin sect then? Finally, we have a lead. Out of gratitude for this information, he decides to be helpful. He informs the bandits that their second in command is actually a traitor before continuing the journey with Dachuan. Soon, they arrive in Bayun County. Our first stop is the Well Inn. According to the intel from his simulation, this is the perfect place to settle Dachuan. Seeing a customer, the landlady greets them warmly. She invites them in with a flourish, asking if they are there for a meal or a room. To be honest, her enthusiasm is quite professional. He requests a room and orders 8 dishes and 2 buckets of rice per meal. Knowing Dachuan's appetite, he simply orders extra from the start. As she leads them upstairs, he can't help but ask the landlady if she feels like they have met somewhere before. The landlady covers her mouth and laughs heartily, asking if he says that to every woman he meets. She jokes that she isn't into younger men. He laughs it off and lets the matter drop. It seems the simulation was just a simulation, not some sort of parallel timeline after all. Once Dachuan is settled, he makes his way to his third sister's house. It is time for a long overdue reunion. The moment they see each other, his sister weeps with joy. That evening, Shun Qingshan returns, bringing the finest wine from the county to celebrate. They toast to his survival against all odds. Later that night, while staying at his sister's house, he sits on his bed and prepares for the next step. He circulates his spiritual energy to clear the alcohol from his system. The quest is complete, and he is rewarded with 10 spirit-inducing pills. We wait a moment as the system processes the reward. The spirit-inducing pills have been successfully delivered. Opening the bottle, a refreshing fragrance immediately fills the room. As the saying goes, anything produced by the system is bound to be high quality. Now, it is time for the random draw of a high-quality trait. We watch as the system cycles through the possibilities. Success. He has pulled a purple epic trait, treasure hunting nose. The good news is that his nose is now quite special. He can now smell the scent of great treasures within a certain range. The bad news, if it isn't a top-tier treasure, he won't smell a thing. It truly is a top-tier trait. With this, he can finally track down the myriad soul banner. What? You say that thing is an evil artifact? Well, details. He tells himself that if others see the banner as evil, it is simply because their cultivation is too low. Still, remembering old Lu's tragic fate, he decides he won't go looking for the myriad soul banner in person just yet. He will test the waters in the simulation first. With the quest complete, the simulator's cooldown resets, and we watch as a new simulation begins. He selects his starting traits: photographic memory, the treasure hunting nose, and a first tier bone structure. He adds effort rewards, spider sense, and demon aura, having finally broken free from the shackles of the Blackstone gang. He personally sent them to the afterlife. After the tragedy at Luoding village, he and Dachuan finally arrive in Bayun County. After paying for 10 years of Dachuan's living expenses, he settles in at his sister's house. It is the first year, and he is 18. The time has come for the random trait draw. Success. He pulls a white tier trait called Brother Kuan. Apparently, when he uses skills like singing, dancing, or rapping, any observer will be deeply captivated by his personal charm. The system asks if he wants to adjust his traits. Well, that is certainly unique. He even sees a soul dancing fusion agent, but he declines without hesitation. The next morning, he rises early and passes the study. He finds Shin Qingshan looking deeply troubled. When he asks what's wrong, Shin refuses to speak and quickly hides a letter. He decisively reveals his 5th level soul-crushing cultivation. Being a minor realm higher than Shan, It certainly leaves the man stunned. Shin tells him about demons killing people and suspects someone in the county is colluding with them. He tells Shin there is no need to doubt. He knows the culprit. However, the mastermind is too powerful for the two of them. Shin suggests that the Demon Slayer Bureau sends inspectors periodically. They can wait for that moment to expose the truth. They agree to endure for now and pretend they know nothing. They must wait 6 months for the inspectors. Once the plan is set, he buys a stallion and rides through the night to Old Lu's hometown. He arrives at Hongtong County in the Wushan district of Bazhou. Over the next 2 months, he travels to every village in Hongtong, even searching the most desolate forests, yet his nose picks up absolutely nothing. Could the nose be broken? No, that's impossible. The system doesn't make mistakes. The only explanation is that the Myriad Soul banner hasn't even appeared yet. In the last simulation, Old Lu didn't actually obtain it until the 17th year. To ensure that nothing in Hongtong County changes because of his presence, he decides to wait for the perfect moment to intercept it. Upon returning to Baiyun County, we see that the inspectors from the Demon Slayer Bureau have arrived, and the town is decorated in celebration. Firecrackers echo through the streets. He hears that the local magistrate, a man so fat he can barely walk, personally went out to greet them. He observes them in secret for a while and notices that the inspectors are refusing all invitations to banquets or gifts. He suspects they aren't in league with Feng Yuqing, but being naturally cautious, he refuses to step forward himself. Before we know it, 2 months have passed, and the inspectors are preparing to leave. On this day, the fat magistrate and Feng Yuqing gather to see them off. Suddenly, a farmer rushes out into the middle of the long street, blocking the path of the entire procession. The fat magistrate gives a sharp command, and the constables on both sides draw their blades. But a voice shouts for them to stop. The lead inspector barks a reprimand. He glances at the farmer and remarks calmly that a peasant woman with no cultivation could hardly hope to assassinate an official like him. He tells her to speak, and she kneels, begging for justice to be served. The inspector offers to hear her out, but the fat magistrate tries to interrupt. The inspector merely glares at him in silence. He asks the magistrate if there is something he's afraid of. The woman points a trembling finger at the official, calling him a dog. She claims demons are killing people in her village, yet the magistrate used her husband as a scapegoat for the crimes. Her husband was a cripple who could barely move, so how could he kill 18 people in a single night? The magistrate's fat begins to tremble. Feng Yuqing's expression shifts instantly. He quietly takes a step back, positioning himself behind the crowd as the woman continues her tearful plea. More and more villagers begin to emerge, kneeling before the inspector. Some have lost family to demons. Others have seen loved ones framed. The fat magistrate desperately pleads with the inspector not to listen to these troublemakers and their lies. He tries to argue that Baiyun County is peaceful and free of demons. However, the sudden appearance of Shin Qingshan shatters his final delusions of safety. To be honest, the magistrate should have seen this coming. Shin Qingshan steps forward, presenting a map of the demon nests in Baiyun County to the lead inspector for his review. We know that Shin Qingshan's map was actually drawn using your unique insights while you watch Feng Yuqing from the crowd. By now, Feng Yuqing has retreated to the very back, clearly planning to flee. You don't risk an interception, but shout loudly instead. Feng Yuqing proves why he is the top expert in Baiyun County, vanishing into the distance before anyone can even react. With the Feng Yuqing matter settled and peace returning to the county, you decide it is time to visit the Qixin sect. After all, the clues regarding the red-haired man point there. In the second year, at age 19, the trait draw begins. The draw is a success. The alien race's strictest father, a gold tier trait. When you fight against non-human races, your attack power increases 100-fold, while damage from non-humans is unconditionally weakened by 100 times. Additionally, you cannot be bewitched by any alien race in any form. Those not of our kind must be purged. Fight on, warrior. You jump for joy at this gold tier find. With this specialized combat bonus, you'll hit demons hard while they barely scratch you. A gold trait must be equipped. In the simulation, you can only adjust these once a year, and missing this would be a disaster. You replace hard work pays off with the alien race's strictest father. To be honest, it's a much better deal. 2 months later, you arrive at the Qixin sect. Despite your poor aptitude, your cultivation is decent enough for them to accept you. However, you aren't a disciple, but a sect member. This means you can learn their techniques without having a formal master. You receive cultivation resources, but in exchange, you must hold a position and contribute to the sect's management and development. You are assigned as a gate patroller. Each day, you simply walk a circuit around the sect, leaving the rest of your time free. You can use that time to cultivate or pursue other interests. In the third year, at age 20, the trait draw begins again. You pull linguistic talent, a green tier trait. Your gift for languages is now maxed out, allowing you to master new tongues rapidly. Your learning efficiency doubles when being taught. You choose not to swap your traits. A year has passed at the Qixin sect, and you've become familiar with everything. Just as the bandit said, it seems most people in the Qixin sect are quite peculiar. They all practice an external technique called spar cultivation, which has a peculiar side effect. The more skilled you become, the redder your hair turns. Within the Qixin sect, people are judged almost entirely by their hair. One might sneer at a mere ant with only a single streak of red. Others might bow to a senior with half a head of crimson, or gaze in awe at an elder whose hair is entirely, and quite elegantly, bright red. He soon learned the unique way the Qixin people greet one another. Over the past year, however, his low-grade constitution has hindered him. His cultivation progress has been slow, leaving him stuck at the 5th level of the Qi realm, and his investigation has hit a bit of a dead end. So far, he hasn't found any useful information, except for one oddity, an ancient tower within the sect. Every time he patrols past it with his team, his spider sense flares up, giving him goosebumps. He eventually asks his senior, Brother Lin, what exactly is kept inside that mysterious tower. Lin explains that it is the place where the sect ancestor meditates in seclusion, and entering without permission carries very severe consequences. Previously, a reckless intruder had broken in, only to be ruthlessly struck down by the ancestor. By the 4th year, he was 21. It is time, once again, for the trait draw to begin. The draw is a success, silent steps. When he intentionally controls his pace, he can move without making a single sound. Furthermore, when he remains perfectly still, even divine senses cannot detect his presence. He wonders if he should adjust his equipped traits now. This trait could be vital for gathering clues within the sect. He decides to replace demonic aura with silent steps. Then one day, as he patrols past the ancient tower, he notices that his spider sense remains quiet. He soon realizes why. A grand sect exchange meeting is being held in Qingzhou, and the ancestor has taken a group of elite disciples away to attend it. He senses an opportunity. He has searched almost every corner of the sect already, and only this ancient tower remains unexplored. After nightfall, he quietly approaches the tower. His spider sense is still silent, suggesting that, for now, it is safe to enter. He climbs to the top of the tower, finds a window that wasn't fully closed, and summons his courage to slip inside. The tower has 7 floors in total. He wanders from the 1st floor to the 7th, only to find every single level completely empty and devoid of furniture. However, the floors themselves are quite strange, as each level is engraved with complex patterns that seem to follow a mysterious, hidden logic. He couldn't understand the patterns, but he observed them carefully, hoping his photographic memory would let him study them later. Suddenly, the floor beneath his feet began to glow, and at that exact moment, his spider sense started screaming in warning. In the nick of time, he threw himself out of the window just as the red light within the room grew blindingly intense. 2 strange, dark shadows slowly materialized. A teleportation circle? That was high-level spatial magic, to be sure. It made little sense for a second-rate sect like Qixin to possess such a rare and powerful formation. The figures inside began to speak, but he couldn't understand a word. He truly regretted not bringing a translation trait along. Suddenly, a voice shouted, "Who's there?" He understood that much, but remained perfectly still, hidden by his silent steps trait. After a moment, a strange wave of energy rippled through the air. It caused him internal injury, yet he didn't move a muscle. One of the figures remarked that if anyone was hiding, the piercing demonic sound he just released would have surely killed them. The other praised his caution. Outside, he felt lucky that his strict father trait had reduced the damage by 100-fold. The teleportation circle glowed once more, and the two mysterious figures vanished as quickly as they had arrived. However, his spider sense remained active, meaning the danger hadn't passed. He stayed frozen in place for another full hour. Finally, the threat faded. It had been a narrow escape that nearly ended his simulation, but at least he had gained a clue. By the 15th year, at age 32, he decided to swap his silent steps trait for demonic vessel. In the blink of an eye, he had spent 15 years at the Chishin sect, rising from a lowly guard to the position of patrol captain. Then one day, while performing his usual rounds in the mountains surrounding the sect, he suddenly witnessed something truly terrifying. A thick, misty demonic aura had formed a nest, and countless monsters were now pouring out of the forest like a tide. It seemed a bit excessive. To be honest, sending this many demons against a second-rate sect felt like a massive overestimation. Every disciple, elder, and even the rarely seen sect master and ancestor emerged to face the looming threat. They watched from the peaks as the demon army swept toward them. However, this was only the beginning of the nightmare. Dark clouds gathered across the sky as greenish bell-like scales flickered in and out of view, and a massive creature began to stir within the mist. Accompanied by the dull roar of thunder, the beast's head emerged from the clouds. It was the Azure Dragon, a sacred beast of the demon clan. Good heavens! The sect master wondered what divine law the Chishin sect had broken to attract such a powerhouse. In that moment, even the strongest among them lost their will to fight. He knelt on the ground in utter despair, realizing the Chishin sect was finished. He knew he couldn't stay here to be buried with the rest. While others might have been trapped, he still had a chance thanks to his legendary trait, Strict Father of the Winged Race, which began to activate. His damage against the winged race increased 100-fold, while any damage they dealt to him was weakened by that same staggering amount. He fought his way through the chaos toward the back of the mountain, where he spotted Elder Enro of the Pavilion of Cultivation in the distance. The elder was being attacked by a pig demon and was sent flying by a brutal hit, yet he refused to let go of the chest in his arms. It didn't take a genius to realize that chest contained something precious. Seeing the elder in danger, he stepped in as his Strict Father trait surged again. With a 100-fold increase in power, a single punch sent that thick-skinned pig demon straight to the afterlife. To be honest, it wasn't even a fair fight. Shocked by such raw strength, Enro handed the heavy chest over to him. Chun-Yi, the elder gasped, "These secret techniques are our most vital treasures." He urged Chun-Yi to take them and flee, saying the future revival of the Chishin sect rested entirely on his shoulders. Chun-Yi asked what would become of the elder. Enro replied that the sect had raised him, and he would stand or fall with it. He told Chun-Yi to go while he held the line for a few moments. The elder's only hope was that the sect would one day rise again. Deeply moved by this sacrifice, Chun-Yi hoisted the chest and ran even faster. A few days later, we find him in Dongxi town, where he rented a small courtyard. The exhaustion from his long flight finally caught up with him. After a long sleep, he began to organize his spoils. Upon opening the chest, he found a mountain of high-level cultivation techniques staring back at him. It was no wonder Enro had been willing to die for these. He picked one up at random and realized he had hit the absolute jackpot. An ordinary martial artist wouldn't see a single book like this in a lifetime, yet he had dozens. And so, he settled into the quiet life of the small town. He spent his time upgrading his internal and external arts, mastering these elite skills. By the 16th year, at age 33, it was time for a change. He drew a new trait, and luck was on his side once more. He successfully obtained the epic tier trait, the one and only true prophet. This new power allowed him to designate one target per day to verify if they were good or evil and decide whether to adjust their traits. He chose to replace his spider sense with the one and only true prophet and swapped demonic aura for dragon and phoenix play. Since the year was looking quiet, he decided to enjoy himself for a while, but only for this year. Next year, it would be time for serious business. The 17th year would be the moment to obtain the Myriad Soul Banner. For now, he spent his days diligently studying cultivation techniques. His nights were spent mastering combat skills, making for a very full life. He replaced his external arts with the New Face Mystic Art and his internal arts with the Pure Young Shadow Spirit Mystic Art. Both were high-level fire tribute techniques, and they allowed his progress to skyrocket. His cultivation realm soared. But as we know, happy days are always short-lived, and the one-year deadline was arriving tomorrow. He planned to indulge himself one last time tonight. On his way to the Spring Fragrance Pavilion, he spotted two figures in the distance. They were blocking his path. One cried out, "Brother Gao, the princess has been poisoned. If the toxin isn't neutralized tonight, she won't survive." To cure this specific poison, one had to channel essence into her body. But the man lamented, "You and I are both eunuchs." They decided they had to snatch someone, and luckily, a man was nearby. Chun-Yi had already turned to leave, but those words made him freeze. He wondered if that nearby man could possibly be him. He looked up, and a short man had already appeared just 5 paces in front of him. The man chuckled and confirmed that yes, he was indeed the one. Chun-Yi tried to run, but he was snatched up and tossed over the man's shoulder. The stranger's strength was immense. Even at level 108, Chun-Yi couldn't resist. He could only watch as the scenery blurred past him. Before he knew it, they had left the town and arrived at a mountain cave. He peered inside, unsure of what to expect. There, he saw a sight he would never forget. The cave was dimly lit, and upon a stone platform in the center lay a woman. As he drew closer, he saw she was dressed in dragon robes. It was immediately clear that she was a person of extraordinary status. He was instantly captivated, not because he was a lecher, mind you, but because she was truly breathtaking. He had heard the situation. "We need your help," the man said. "Afterward, you must act as if today never happened." Chun-Yi realized with a shock that she was the princess. The short man confirmed she was the real deal, then sneered. "As for whether you'll live, you certainly won't if you refuse to lend a hand." The guard warned him that if he refused, he would die right now. "Enough talk," he snapped. "You have the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. Old AI, let's go." With that, the two men turned and left. Chun-Yi didn't hesitate for a second. He took a deep breath and strode into the mountain cave. As Chun-Yi entered, their eyes met in the dim light. The atmosphere was, to be honest, a bit awkward until she finally broke the silence. She began to tell her story. Her name was Li Lingyue, known as the Princess of 100 Flowers, and she explained why she was in this place. It turns out she was on her way to the Great Shur Kingdom in the southern border for an arranged political marriage when she passed through this area. The trouble started this morning. She had no desire to marry the king of Great Shur, a man described as old, fat, and ugly, so she took action. She used a small trick during the journey to escape from the wedding procession. Unfortunately, her freedom was destined to be short-lived. The Emperor of Great Qian had assigned 2 personal bodyguards to her, both of whom were elite masters of the spirit concentration realm. Despite her efforts to flee from her father's arrangements and the king of Great Shur, those high-level experts were simply too fast for her. She was eventually cornered. Being a woman of fierce character, she refused to submit, and seeing a poisonous heartbreaking grass nearby, she swallowed it without a moment's hesitation. However, she had misidentified the plant. It wasn't poison, but a potent aphrodisiac called love talk. The rest of the story, as we can imagine, was easy to piece together. Princess Lingyue looked at Chun-Yi, wanting to say something, but she hesitated. But Chun-Yi guessed what was on her mind. "Do you want me to take you away?" he asked. At those words, a glimmer of hope flashed in her eyes. "Princess, we're coming in, the short guard announced as he entered. He glanced at Linghua to ensure she was safe and recovered. Then, without warning, he threw a powerful punch directly at Chun-Yi. But in a sudden move, Princess Linghua stepped in. She resolutely shielded Chun-Yi with her own body. The guard growled that the royal honor was at stake, and they couldn't leave witnesses behind. This boy cannot be allowed to live, he insisted. But Linghua stepped forward, an aura of imperial majesty radiating from her presence. Royal honor? How laughable, she retorted. What honor is left for a royalty that trades women for peace? The tall guard could only sigh. He bowed his head and argued that this wasn't the time for politics. If this scandal got out, her reputation in the southern border would be ruined. Scandal? What scandal? She challenged. Chun-Yi and I are simply two people in love, which, naturally, was a bold claim to make on the spot. We see a complete transformation in Princess Linghua. Her imperial aura is now fully unleashed, a far cry from the fragile woman she was moments ago. Ultimately, the princess managed to protect Chun-Yi with her authority, but the political marriage had to proceed. As they parted, her eyes were filled with tears. It seemed as though she had truly fallen for him, and as they said their goodbyes, neither knew when they might meet again. He whispered to himself that it wouldn't be long. For him, the next simulation would bring them together, but for the princess, it felt like a lifetime away. In the 17th year, at age 34, he replaced his roaming dragon skill with demonic chi. Our protagonist was preparing for a change. He then swapped his true prophecy for spider sense, finally reaching the critical turning point of his current life. He arrived near the graves of old Lu's family, where from a distance, he could see old Lu kneeling before a tombstone, weeping in mourning. As the man cried, the grave suddenly exploded, and a black banner wrapped in dark mist came flying out of the earth. The 10,000 soul banner descended as thick black fog rose up, accompanied by a series of piercing, chilling laughs. Within that dark mist, a face began to emerge, though its features remained blurred and indistinct. It spoke to old Lu, asking if he hungered for power. The answer, of course, was a desperate yes. Old Lu cried out that he wanted power to shatter the injustice and darkness of this world. He wanted those who bullied him to feel true fear. The entity called him a true warrior and invited him to step forward. It urged him to seize this power from the abyss and nightmares, even if it might require a small, insignificant price. But what was a price to a man like him? Old Lu looked half mad, clearly already under the spell of the 10,000 soul banner. This destiny was too heavy for old Lu to handle, so Chun-Yi stepped in. Seeing old Lu was useless, the banner flew toward our hero instead. It asked if he craved power, its voice vibrating through his very soul with a powerful, hypnotic charm. However, there was a catch. Because he possessed the strictest father of foreign races trait, he was immune to all foreign enchantments. And the banner, well, it wasn't human. Since it counted as a foreign entity, the charm failed. Sensing something was wrong, the banner intensified its influence, calling him friend once more. It asked if he desired to break the world's darkness, but Chun-Yi simply reached out and grabbed the physical banner, cutting the nonsense short. Chun-Yi looked at the entity and asked if it was the 10,000 soul banner, before immediately unleashing a relentless barrage of strikes upon it. He mocked it as a counterfeit product, yet, even though the banner seemed broken, the black mist didn't dissipate, a stubborn nuisance, to be sure. He complained about the state of the clean black banner he'd just found, wondering why it had no physical form if it truly was the legendary artifact. The spirit snapped back, explaining it was an immortal chi spirit. Even without a physical body, it could exist, though it would grow increasingly weak. It admitted it needed to find a sucker, pardon me, a fated person, to help it, and so, after a rather friendly exchange of words, our hero gained a basic understanding of the situation. The creature was indeed just a spirit, having long ago lost its original physical vessel. However, it could possess any object, and the closer that object's form and quality were to its original body, the more of its true, devastating power it would be able to unleash upon the world. And so, the two of them reached a strategic partnership. The goal wasn't murder, of course, but the slaying of demons, starting from that very day. He vowed to exorcise evil and capture the world's vengeful spirits, leading us eventually to the remote Lago village in Tongtong County. There, we see a group of villagers praying to a mountain god, pushing a young girl of 5 or 6 years old toward a statue. The statue had a hideous, distorted face, hardly the look of a benevolent deity, when suddenly, its eyes began to glow. The villagers cheered, believing the mountain god had accepted their offering and would grant their wishes. They celebrated the coming harvest, inviting the god to enjoy its delicious meal with a fervor that was, frankly, quite unsettling. When Chun-Yi appeared, they shouted at him, calling him a madman and an outsider, demanding he leave their sacred grounds immediately. He calmly told them that there are no saviors or gods to rely on. To create a happy life, one must rely on oneself. And then, he stepped forward and shattered the statue with a single, ordinary punch. In an instant, a wild wind howled as a voice roared, demanding to know how he dared destroy the idol and desecrate the incense offerings. The sound was deafening, causing the villagers to fall to the ground in absolute terror. They prostrated themselves before the broken stone, begging the mountain god for mercy and blaming the destruction on the stranger. The villagers cried out that this despicable outsider was to blame, while the entity roared that it had always been feared in Lago village, and now, the madman would pay with his life. A fierce bolt of clear light struck Chun-Yi directly in the back, but he didn't even flinch. Instead, the attack simply bounced off him and went flying back. Refusing to believe its eyes, the light launched a relentless, 360-degree assault from every possible angle, hitting him with the supposed fury of a stern patriarch. Under the effect of his hundredfold weakening, such an attack was no different from a mild itch, and frankly, he had grown tired of the game. Looking at the creature wearing a ridiculous, mismatched hat, he called it a piece of trash, asking if it could do anything other than cover him in its own spit. The wolf demon exerted every ounce of its strength, but seeing that it had only managed a tiny scratch on his foot, it was consumed by a mixture of shame and rage. It became so overwhelmed that it literally forgot to breathe and dropped dead on the spot. Seeing this, the villagers gasped, believing a true immortal had descended. The villagers immediately turned and began bowing to him without end, leaving Chun-Yi utterly speechless at their ignorance as he gave them a final warning. He forbade them from continuing their human sacrifices and left the village, wondering why his cultivation hadn't increased at all despite the kill. The spirit inside the banner scoffed, asking him if he really expected such a massive leap in power to happen that quickly. The 10,000 soul banner began to tempt him again, urging him to kill them all, but of course, such whispers were useless against his golden traits. By the 18th year, at age 35, he traveled with the banner to track down demonic artifacts and purge the world of evil spirits. Because the artifact could sense the strength of his enemies, he managed to avoid any major disasters, keeping his journey relatively smooth. As the number of souls within the banner grew, the efficiency of the power it fed back to him increased, and so we reached the 20th year. At age 37, his constant practice of the Sinyan mysterious art caused more and more of his hair to turn a vibrant shade of crimson. He now possessed a flowing head of red hair, and combined with his reputation for slaying demons, his name began to spread throughout the land. Some busybodies even gave him a nickname, the Red-Haired Demon Slayer, or simply Red Hair. 2 years later, at age 39, his martial realm reached the 12th level of the giant spirit stage, but his low-tier bone structure was finally starting to limit his progress. He found himself unable to break through to the soul-urging realm, a stage that required a level of spiritual manipulation he hadn't yet mastered. The 10,000 soul banner saw its chance, claiming this was its area of expertise as it tempted him with a soul infusion formation. The banner claimed that if he gathered 10,000 souls, it could perform a body infusion to break through the soul-urging bottleneck. However, after a brief exchange with his affectionate fists, the 10,000 soul banner reconsidered and lowered the requirement to just 300 demon souls. It suggested that if he found a medium-tier spiritual vessel for it, the great soul infusion formation could finally be activated. And so, we reached the 20th year. At age 45, we see him drawing a new trait. As his martial realm had grown, the green and purple light points in the pool had significantly increased. Yet, they continued to swirl at a high speed, making them incredibly difficult to capture. The draw was a success, flash of inspiration. This trait would occasionally cause a spark of genius to flicker within his mind. It might provide a brilliant idea or a sudden burst of comprehension, though one can only hope it isn't a terrible idea instead. He considered whether to equip it. It was essentially a low-tier version of an intelligence boost, useful, to be sure, but not transformative. Since his trait slots were limited, he decided to save it for later and chose not to equip it. Over the years, he had traveled far to slay demons. While collecting souls, he also sold demon materials, earning a decent amount of spirit stones. Eventually, he arrived at the hidden weapon pavilion. He requested a master blacksmith to forge a proper spiritual body for the 10,000 soul banner. 3 days later, the skilled old master presented him with a high-tier spiritual version of the banner. The blacksmith stared at the finished product, watching the thick black smoke billowing from the dark banner, and felt utterly bewildered. He asked what kind of banner it was, and Chun-Yi simply called it a demon-subduing banner. Given the red-haired demon slayer's reputation, the man believed him. 2.5 days later, he arrived in Nanyang County, just 1 province away. A rogue cultivator who specialized in formations lived there. The two were old acquaintances. He greeted Brother Mai, explaining that he had a formation he needed help setting up. He told Mai that his breakthrough to the soul-urging realm depended on this, and he asked for his help regardless of the final outcome. To be fair, he had already prepared a generous sum of spirit stones as a reward for the favor. Mai waved it off, asking why Brother Chun would even mention payment for such a simple task. He asked for the blueprints, promising to set the formation immediately after a quick review. Chun-Yi then produced the soul infusion diagram. The diagram for this formation appeared incredibly complex, at least to an outsider like him. It was utterly incomprehensible. To Chun-Yi, the blueprints might as well have been written in an alien language, and as Mai took one look, his calm demeanor instantly vanished. Mai cleared his throat and suggested they actually discuss that payment after all. Clearly, this was no simple favor. A few days later, after numerous attempts and frustrating failures, Mai emerged looking less like a cultivator and more like an exhausted construction worker. He climbed out of the formation trenches Chun-Yi had helped dig, announcing that the system was finally running and the circuits were fully lit. The energy consumption was stable, there were no explosions, and the lights hadn't flickered out. The functional tests were, miraculously, a success. Watching him, Chun-Yi felt the man reminded him of his past life as a programmer. One could only hope this formation didn't have any hidden bugs. Once the setup was complete, he handed over the reward. Mai took his leave immediately, showing no desire to pry into Chun-Yi's secrets. As anyone who travels the world knows, a lack of boundaries is a quick way to end up dead. And so, the breakthrough began. It was time for the 10,000 soul banner to perform. Now housed in a high-tier spiritual body, it unfurled with majestic, dark power. It blotted out the sun like a thick fog rising from the depths of hell, completely enveloping half the mountain in darkness. 300 demon souls were released as a massive pile of spirit stones burned within the circle, fueling the formation's activation. The banner asked if he was ready, warning that the spiritual infusion would be agonizing, but his gaze remained steady and his heart like iron. He told himself that if he even flinched, he would consider it a defeat. As the souls poured into his body, the banner was utterly shocked. Its previous masters had all been strong-willed men, yet every single one of them had wailed in agony during this process. But Chun-Yi didn't even blink, let alone frown. To be honest, he was cheating a bit. He had already swapped his traits to dull his sense of pain. He felt absolutely nothing. Once the 300 souls were fully digested, the black mist vanished, and a golden light descended upon him. A sense of pure comfort washed over him, and he couldn't help but let out a long laugh. Finally, he had reached the soul-urging realm. Entering the soul-urging realm was a joyous occasion, certainly, but we must remember this is only one step on the long path of cultivation. There were still many mountains left for him to climb, and for a man of mediocre talent, the ascent would only become more difficult. At this point, we can't help but notice that Chun-Yi's journey is starting to feel quite a bit like a classic tale of a mortal's ascent to immortality. It was now the 29th year, and at 46 years old, it was time for him to draw a new trait. The draw was a success, granting him ancient mortal. This meant that if he possessed only low-tier roots and lacked a special constitution, or if he hadn't reshaped his body with heavenly treasures, his comprehension of divine abilities would no longer be restricted by the laws of heaven and earth. Furthermore, the power of his divine abilities would increase tenfold. In this world of cultivation, all worldly debts and grudges eventually fade into nothingness. He was destined to be ordinary, yet far from mediocre. He chose to equip this legendary trait immediately, as it perfectly suited his current situation. Naturally, he put it to use. As his strength grew, the scattered low-level demons of the great Qian Empire no longer interested him in the slightest. He decided it was time to venture into the eastern wastelands, but before departing, he returned to Baiyun County. The Yulian was as busy as ever. Since he had taken the 10,000 soul banner earlier, no martial artist had come to slaughter the town. There, he found Dachuan, who was living quite happily. She spent her days doing odd jobs and enjoyed meat with every meal. He gave the landlady a sum of silver, asking her to continue looking after the girl. He noticed how much she had grown, while she was startled by his strange hair color. It was a moment of mutual surprise, to be sure. He approached an old man nearby and asked where the family of Shinqing Shan had moved to. Shin what mountain? The old man asked. Shinqing Shan, old sir. Chun-Yi repeated patiently. What mountain? Seeing the old man was about to play games, Chun-Yi decisively drew his heavy sword, sending stone fragments flying through the air. The old man sat up straight instantly. He explained that ever since Shinqing Shan had been taken away, the family had fallen into poverty. Unable to afford the city, they moved to the countryside. When asked who took him, the man replied it was 2 martial artists who descended from the sky. Chun-Yi was stunned. Martial artists capable of flight were at least at the martial king rank, the absolute elite of the entire great Qian Empire. Why would such powerful figures kidnap Shinqing Shan? After gathering more info from the now very helpful old man, he found the location of his third sister. He traveled all the way to Huang village, where from a distance, he spotted a group of local thugs causing a scene. His sister and her daughter were surrounded, and the leader of the thugs wore a wicked grin. Chun-Yi's expression darkened. Just hand your daughter over to old Master Zhang, the thug sneered. Or else what? Chun-Yi's sudden appearance startled the leader of the thugs, who was just about to start cursing him out. But seeing that flowing red hair, the man's eyes darted around as he stammered. Or else we won't come back again. You want to leave? Have you asked the 10,000 soul banner in my hand? Chun-Yi moved with blinding speed. To a mere mortal, his movements were a blur. Before they could even react, it was already over. Being kind-hearted, he spared their lives. Instead, he simply left them with lifelong disabilities and a fair amount of psychological trauma. What happened here, he asked. His third sister sighed and began to recount the hardships of the past decade. 10 years ago, Shin Qingshan had been forcibly taken away. Without their protector, the family was vulnerable. Old Master Zhang tried to force Shin Xiqing into marriage, but his sister refused. So, the old man found endless ways to harass her, sending thugs to trash her home until the mother and daughter were forced to move. When she tried to run a small business to survive, the Zhang family sent men to cause trouble and smash her stall to pieces. They even demanded compensation for damages. With no other choice, she took her daughter and fled to the countryside. Yet even here, they couldn't escape the Zhang family's persistence. Well, tomorrow, an anonymous demonic cultivator might just visit Baiyun County. They should prepare a warm welcome. By the way, Shenyi asked, who exactly took my brother-in-law? Shenyan recalled that day. What? I am a descendant of the Starry Sky Shin family, lost here in the Five Jade region. Yes, that was the claim. You are indeed, the strangers had said. Would we, great martial kings, bother lying to a minor soul-breaking stage cultivator? They explained that the Shun family was an ancient clan living in a star realm beyond the 9 heavens, with resources far beyond this world. Enough talk, come with us. This is your great destiny. Qingshan asked if he could bring his wife and daughter, but the answer was no. His status was deemed too low. He had no right to bring outsider family members beyond the realm's borders. If he truly wished to reunite with them, he would first have to raise his standing within the Shin family. A difficult task, to be sure. With those final words, the two powerful figures forcibly took his brother-in-law away, leaving a broken family behind. When asked how they left, she could only describe it as a sudden leap. They simply flew into the sky and vanished. Quite strange indeed. But we have to wonder, how could they be so certain that her husband, Shin Qingshan, was truly a member of their Shin family? Qingshan had asked the same thing. The stout old man explained that anyone capable of practicing the Zhenyang art must be a Shun. For outsiders, it was supposedly impossible to master the family's secret techniques. One can't help but wonder why such a grand destiny never falls into our laps. He questioned why he wasn't a lost pearl of some great clan himself. But then, a realization hit him. He had also practiced the Zhenyang art. During his second simulation, his brother-in-law had given him 4 mid-tier techniques, and this very Zhenyang art became his primary internal cultivation. Back then, he carried the hard work pays off trait. With that, as long as one perseveres in a single task, there will always be a harvest, even if it isn't much. So, he wasn't actually of the Shin bloodline. It was only because of his special trait that he managed to learn the technique. He thought that in the next simulation, it might be fun to intercept his brother-in-law's luck. It wouldn't hurt reality. After all, as the tide rises on the Chantang River, he joked that today he finally knew he was Shani, and so, the simulation continued. On the following day, he left a sum of money for his sister and departed. Of course, he didn't truly leave. Instead, he took his wine barrel and paid a visit to Baiyun County. Rumor has it a demonic cultivator visited the Zhang family and, finding their tofu pudding too salty, flew into a terrible rage. From that day on, every bowl of tofu pudding in Baiyun County was served sweet. A drastic solution, to be sure. In the 31st year, at age 49, he headed east on a new journey. On this day, he crossed the boundary between the Central Plains and the Eastern Wasteland, the Sanqiang Ridge. This is the longest mountain range in the Wu Yi realm, boasting the highest average elevation. He had finally set foot on the Eastern Wasteland, a place where human traces are few and far between. Everywhere he looked, there were towering ancient trees and deep, primordial forests. However, the Eastern Wasteland wasn't entirely uninhabited. The Wuji Sword sect, the strongest martial force in the realm, is located here. For millennia, they have stood as the human race's first line of defense against the demons of the great wilderness, earning them universal respect. In the 32nd year, at age 50, he equipped the old but bold trait, ensuring his combat power wouldn't fade with age. Suddenly, he sensed a demonic aura. He could track the movements of demons, and with his spider sense warning him of danger, he could avoid powerful beasts well in advance. Thanks to the alien's strictest father trait, he became a true killer in the Eastern Wasteland, collecting more demon souls this year than in the previous 5 or 6 combined. The only pity, of course, was that there was nowhere to sell the demon materials he gathered. Finding a living person here was a challenge in itself, and he certainly couldn't sell to the demons. Still, his cultivation progressed rapidly. He reached the 4th level of the soul-crushing realm. Not bad at all. As long as there are enough souls, the breakthrough is perfectly smooth. The 10,000 soul banner boasted proudly, claiming its status as an immortal treasure was no joke. It was quite full of itself, really. Following the demonic aura of a soul-crushing beast, he arrived at a valley where steep cliffs towered on both sides, creating a narrow space. The area was overgrown with weeds, with only a small 3-meter entrance. As soon as he entered, his spider sense began screaming. Something was wrong. The surroundings were far too quiet. Just as he decided to retreat from the valley and find a safer path, he discovered the entrance was already blocked by a massive bull demon. High above, the sharp cries of eagles echoed through the sky. Looking up, he saw several eagle demons staring down with piercing eyes. And as it turned out, that was only the beginning. From beneath the thick weeds within the valley, countless demons slowly began to emerge from their hiding spots. A golden-furred rat demon stepped to the front, sneering at the red-haired human and asking where he thought he could run today. He admitted he hadn't expected demons to use such clever tactics. The rat scoffed, noting they weren't just simple rabbits to be hunted. For 2 years, he had slaughtered their kin and imprisoned their souls within that wretched banner to serve his own ends. He had denied them peace even in death. He scratched his face awkwardly. From the demon's perspective, he truly was a monster. With a single command from the Golden Rat King, 10,000 demons launched a charge that made the very earth tremble beneath them. A fierce demonic aura surged toward him, but he felt no fear. He summoned his rock iron greatsword, ready to face the onslaught. He welcomed them to come forward and witness the full extent of a father's wrath. Because of the alien's strictest father trait, he dealt massive critical damage to demons, essentially taking them down with a single blow. Their attacks were weakened 100-fold, and even spirit realm demons couldn't break his defense as his red hair fluttered across the battlefield. His aura surged like mountains and rivers. Such a desperate situation stirred his blood, making him want to face them with one hand behind his back. The demons rallied, shouting for their brothers to charge, claiming they would never know peace unless this monster was finally eliminated. Swearing to fight to the death, the demons actually started chanting slogans, throwing themselves forward one after another without any regard for their lives. The pressure on him increased instantly. Moved by the demon's tragic bravery, he naturally began to swing his fists with even greater force. His sword knew no fatigue, but a man's physical strength has its limits. He grew tired, and his wounds began to multiply. The sea of demons showed no sign of thinning, and when he tried to break through, he found the only exit in the valley blocked. A bull demon, built like a literal tank, stood firm at the entrance, forcing him to fight on for half a day in a fierce struggle. He had lost count of how many demons he had cut down, and by now, the corpses beneath his feet had piled into a mountain. Standing atop a pile of demon corpses 10 meters high, he held the soul banner in one hand and his chipped rock iron greatsword in the other. It seemed he had finally reached the end of the road. Under the demons' overwhelming swarm tactics, they had exhausted him to the point of collapse. One more charge would surely be the end of him, yet the 10,000 soul banner just stood by, making sarcastic remarks about his performance. It told him he was pathetic, suggesting he should have just given it his essence earlier, a comment he met with a silent curse. Suddenly, a voice addressed him as a young friend of the demonic path, wondering how a mere soul-crushing realm cultivator could be such a handful. He replied that despite the banner, he wasn't a demonic cultivator, fighter, but simply a demon slayer traveling the world. To be honest, he was quite modest. Seeing another human arrive, the Golden Rat King panicked, realizing the situation was slipping out of his tiny, furry hands. He ordered his elite demons to kill the red-haired human immediately, desperate to ensure he didn't escape this trap alive. He gripped his dull, notched sword, prepared to use every last ounce of his strength to end his life in this final, glorious stand. Just then, an invisible force lifted him steadily, carrying him into the air and away from the blood-soaked ground. As he flew out of the valley, some bird demons tried to give chase, but the newcomer casually swatted them away with a burst of sword chi. The bird demons instantly stiffened and fell straight to the ground. With the pursuers dealt with, the flying sword accelerated in the blink of an eye. We see them arrive at a mountain peak, where Chun-Yi expresses his deep gratitude, stating he will never forget this life-saving favor. The stranger notes that whether one follows the righteous or demonic path, they are still human, observing that the banner contains only demon souls. Deep down, Chun-Yi felt a wave of relief. The souls of old Master Zhang's family were so weak they had already been consumed by the demons. The man wonders if Chun-Yi possesses a special constitution that restrains the demon race, as fighting so many higher-level foes is quite a feat. To be honest, surviving against such odds was bordering on the miraculous, and Chun-Yi could only nod along in quick agreement. He claims he does indeed have a special constitution, a literal demon bane, though the stranger notes his low-grade spiritual roots are a pity. Reaching the soul-crushing realm was already difficult, and a breakthrough seemed unlikely. Otherwise, he might have tipped the balance between the two races. Perhaps out of respect for this unique constitution, the stranger hands him a jade medallion for use in times of dire need. He explains that by injecting spiritual energy, nearby members of the Wuji sword sect will sense the signal and rush to his aid. It is a valuable gift indeed. Being able to call upon the world's top sect when outmatched is a comforting insurance policy. By the 41st year, at age 59, the feedback from the 10,000 soul banner pushes his cultivation to the peak of the soul-crushing realm. He was just one step away from the golden body realm, yet he spent 4 years trying to kick that door down to no avail. The banner mocks him, pointing out that with his mediocre roots, no amount of standard cultivation would ever grant him a breakthrough. He asks the ancient artifact if there is any other way, and the banner reveals a single possibility. He must locate an earth vein. Imagine the earth vein as the very breath of the world, a concentration of essence that could force his progression forward. However, these veins are living things that wander through the earth, and so, in the 42nd year, the search begins. Now 60 years old, he dons his treasure hunting gear and begins wandering the lands in search of these elusive spiritual currents. By the 43rd year, he hasn't rested for a single day, crossing famous mountains and great peaks while continuing his search. As we reach the 47th year, autumn turns to winter, and he has entered his twilight years, still searching for that hidden power. Over these years, he has essentially been living the life of a wild man, homeless, wandering aimlessly, and constantly on the move. As he washes by a lake to trim his overgrown beard, he suddenly catches a strange, exotic fragrance, a sign that a supreme treasure is appearing. His treasure hunting instincts flare up immediately, and he sprints toward the scent just as a violent gale sweeps over his head. Looking up, we see the heavy clouds slowly splitting apart amidst dull thunder as several streaks of light flash across the sky. They are all heading for the treasure. In the distance, he spots 9 massive, 4-legged beasts with dragon heads and hooves. They are pulling a magnificent golden carriage, racing through the heavens with a level of style that is, frankly, quite impressive. A carriage pulled by 9 dragons is certainly sophisticated, but just as he notes this, an even more powerful figure makes an entrance. A colossal bronze ship sails through the air, looking for all the world like a massive aircraft carrier flying through the clouds. The sight leaves him completely slack-jawed. Clearly, the birth of this treasure has drawn the attention of every major power in the land. He knows deep down he can't compete for it, but he must experience this to inherit the memory for his next simulation. Perhaps next time he can stay one step ahead of these giants. From afar, he spots a giant bronze cauldron standing upon the earth. It is surrounded by people radiating terrifying auras, all top-tier experts, when suddenly, the situation takes a violent turn. White flames erupt into a massive mushroom cloud, and a terrifying shockwave sweeps forward, catching him in its wake. He is sent flying over 1,000 meters. At his advanced age, such a fall would usually mean the end of this simulation. But as luck would have it, a crocodile demon is sunbathing right where he is about to land, while he is still midair. Thinking fast, a brilliant idea strikes him, and he decides to claim a rather unexpected paternal relationship with the beast. He activates his strictest father trait, causing his blood chi to explode 100-fold and instantly reinforcing his physical body for the impact. He crushes the crocodile demon to death upon landing while remaining completely unharmed. Naturally, he decides to skin it for a new belt. Meanwhile, several streaks of light fly over his head and scatter in all directions, and it seems fate is finally smiling upon him. One of those lights lands nearby, far from the chaotic center where he is entirely alone, and he immediately begins the chase. He spots a bronze sword, 3 feet long, with a cold, shimmering light radiating from its entire blade. Waves of killing intent seem to swirl around it, and he can't help but think it's a magnificent treasure. He rushes forward, eager to claim it, but a bald monk suddenly appears and beats him to the punch. The monk pulls the bronze sword from the earth, stuffs it into a small cloth bag, and gives it a satisfied pat. He calls out to the bald donkey, but the monk calmly tells him not to be upset, as the item is destined for Buddha. The monk claims he is merely collecting it on Buddha's behalf before vanishing into a breeze. Clearly, he is a master. He is left fuming, but fortunately, fate intervenes as another wave of treasures comes flying out of the sky. One of them is heading straight for his position, and as he chases the streak of light across the ground, he feels a certain thrill. It feels exactly like chasing a supply crate in a survival game, to be perfectly honest. Suddenly, a sharp wind brushes past him as that same bald monk reappears, calmly picking up a jade slip from the ground. The monk brushes off the dust and solemnly places it into his bag with a quiet prayer. He tells our hero that this is a demonic technique and far too dangerous to touch, so he must destroy it for the world's safety. Frustrated, he asks why the monk is only targeting him when there are so many others to rob, but the monk just laughs. The monk explains that among all the experts here, he is the only one he can actually beat, an answer that leaves him speechless. A few more treasures fall nearby, but he decides to stop chasing them. Without enough strength, a treasure is just a death sentence. Just as people gather around the strong, these spiritual weapons do the same, making us wonder what is at the center of it all. It is a great Tao immortal artifact, far beyond standard rank, and its aura suggests it carries the power of the wood element. This must be the legendary cauldron of the 9 provinces, whose appearance has drawn every martial power in the world to this spot. A grand tournament is organized, where the great masters, preserving their dignity, let the younger generation fight for the prize instead. The winning faction will claim the cauldron, a clever way to prevent the human race from exhausting its strength in a total war. As the demon race grows weak, the winding assembly drags on, and we see the martial artists at the dojo beginning to grow restless. They spontaneously organize a market, and by selling the demon materials he accumulated over the years, he actually makes quite a profit. Afterward, he wanders through the stalls and finds the place bustling, even selling rare storage spiritual tools that are usually impossible to find. He doesn't hesitate to spend a fortune to buy a storage ring, but a certain voice in his head isn't exactly pleased. The spirit within the myriad soul banner asks where the trust has gone, reminding him that the banner already has a storage function. He scoffs at the banner's complaint. To be honest, he has a very good reason for wanting a private place for his things. The snacks he keeps in the banner disappear by over 3% every month, which is impressive considering the spirit doesn't even have a stomach. At the winding assembly, we see him spot a familiar face, a member of the Wuji sword sect who once saved his life. The man's name is Jianzhu, and as our hero watches him, Jianzhu looks back and offers a subtle, knowing nod. The old monk asks in surprise if he knows Jianzhu, and he explains that the man saved him and even gave him a jade token. As he shows off the jade token, the old monk takes one look at it and offers a very sudden, very polite smile. Suddenly, the monk pulls out the bronze sword and the jade slip he snatched earlier, claiming he has finished his appraisal of them. He declares the sword has no fate with Buddha after all, and the jade slip isn't demonic, so the benefactor may use them freely. He can't help but laugh at the monk's sudden change of heart, calling him a coward for folding just because Jianzhu is nearby. The monk simply keeps smiling with a look of total understanding, while our hero tests out his new storage ring. In the blink of an eye, the jade sword is tucked away. He introduces himself as Chun-Yi and asks for the monk's name. The monk reveals his name is Zhenpin, a disciple of the Jingang Temple, one of the 8 great sects of the 5 regions. Curious, Chun-Yi asks if there are many cults in the Western Liang region where the monk comes from. Zhenpin shakes his head, explaining that he has been stuck in the soul transformation realm so long he might need a different path to break through. The monk tells him not to speak recklessly, as it is simply a matter of different beliefs, and the two agree to travel together after the assembly. They decide to head to Western Liang together. By the 13th month, the winning assembly finally reaches the finals of the 13th group match. Zheng Shi crushes his peers to take first place, and as the winning side, the Wuji sword sect prepares to claim the prize. Jianzhu steps forward to collect the 9 provinces cauldron, but after a brief moment, he suddenly bursts into a loud laugh. He remarks that they spent a year preparing for this assembly, only to end up with what amounts to a giant, oversized brick. The crowd moves forward in curiosity to investigate, and we see Chun-Yi join the excitement, reaching out to touch the cauldron himself. It feels like cold, ordinary metal with nothing special about it, until a familiar figure suddenly flashes before his eyes. He sees Chun. He wonders why this is happening and where the spirit of the artifact has gone while listening to the crowd's chatter. He realizes exactly what the problem is. The spirit of the 9 provinces cauldron is missing, leaving it as nothing more than a dead object. Without its spirit, it can't function at all. Looking at the information from the spirit simulation, he finds himself feeling quite dazed. He wonders why the cauldron showed him to Chun. Could his friend actually be the spirit? The massacre at Luoding village was always strange. It was utterly bizarre. Why would dozens of powerful martial artists go out of their way to slaughter everyone in a tiny place like that? He wonders if it was all related to Chun and if the attackers were actually after him. Regardless, he decides to move on for now. In the next simulation, he plans to bring Chun to the cauldron to see if a miracle occurs. The simulation continues into the 48th year. Now 66 years old, and with the assembly over, he and Zhenpin travel to Western Liang, where he asks the monk a question. He asks which cult in Western Liang is the most sinister, and Zhenpin points to the sacred fire cult, whose members worship flames. Their initiation involves burning one's entire body, which is pure madness. To be honest, they sound like a truly deranged group. He decides these heretics must be eliminated and asks the monk to lead the way so he can deliver some divine justice. Because their doctrines are so extreme, the sacred fire cult operates as an underground organization, making them very difficult to track down. Fortunately, Zhenpin has a plan. Since the cultists frequently set themselves on fire, they must endure the agony of those burns. Every member requires a specific pill called Qingbu Liang to survive, and they consume these medicines in massive quantities. And so, we see them stake out a local pharmacy to watch for suspicious characters, eventually tailing a buyer who leads them straight to a cultist. The man is acting incredibly secretive, clearly up to no good. Chun-Yi turns to the monk and asks if the people of this sacred fire cult are actually powerful. Zhenpin explains that 40 years ago, they were a top-tier force in Western Liang, once standing on equal footing with the Diamond Temple. But then, something mysterious happened. Their elites and leaders all perished, leaving only weaklings who haven't even mastered the golden body technique. The monk suggests they strike immediately, believing the cult will crumble before them, but Chun-Yi surprises him by saying he has no intention of destroying them. Instead, he claims he wants to join them because he loves fire, pointing to his red hair as proof of his devotion to the fire god. After convincing Zhenpin to leave, he enters the sacred fire cult's territory alone and boldly declares his desire to join their ranks. To his shock, they immediately name him their holy son. It is a development so sudden it borders on the absurd, really. He wonders how a promotion could possibly happen this fast, but he decides to spend a few days attempting to blend in with their strange culture. These people are truly deranged. They refuse to eat normal food, choosing instead to burn their meals into carbon and swallow them while still glowing with sparks. Their training is even worse, involving literal self-immolation that leaves every member grimacing in absolute agony. Yet, through the pain, they scream praises to the fire god. Honestly, Chun-Yi finds it difficult to fit in simply because he is far too sane. After a few days, he decides to drop the act and approaches the cult leader, claiming his cultivation is stuck at the peak of the Emerald Soul Realm. He asks if the cult has a secret method to break through his bottleneck, and the leader eagerly confirms that such a way exists for the Holy Sun. However, the leader seems stunned that he is already at the peak of the Emerald Soul Realm. It seems the cult's current standards are quite low. Chun-Yi realizes with a start that the cult doesn't have a single member at that level, and the leader explains he simply doesn't know their history. Ever since that disaster 40 years ago, they didn't just lose their elites, they lost their core cultivation techniques as well. Without the key methods to bolster their faith, increasing their power has become nearly impossible, which makes sense, as self-mutilation is rarely a path to strength. At the leader's call, the members of the sacred fire cult gather together, having heard that they are going to help the Holy Sun break through. Rather than being resentful, the followers are incredibly enthusiastic, chanting incomprehensible slogans as the night begins to fall. We watch as they begin to arrange pieces of charcoal into a ritual formation, shouting that today they will sacrifice their very bodies and souls. Their goal is to help the Holy Sun break through his limits and restore the cult's glory, but we soon realize this is the legendary pitfall method. Deep down, Chun-Yi feels a flicker of pity, but he reminds himself that these cultists are a plague upon the world. Perhaps serving as his stepping stone is for the best. In a way, helping him reach a higher level might be the only truly good thing they ever do for this world. They chant their core doctrine, to burn their bodies to save the world and ignite their hearts for the fire god, over and over again. Suddenly, a strange and ancient power flows through the formation and surges beneath him. To his surprise, he finds he cannot move a muscle. That crude formation, made of charcoal, transforms into a cage of energy, pinning him to the spot like a trapped animal. It seems our protagonist has been played, they aren't giving him energy, they are draining his essence. He realizes then that a high-level hunter often appears as prey. The sacrifice for this ritual wasn't meant to be them, it was always meant to be him. Naturally, this realization sends him into an instant, cold fury. He can't believe these heretics actually dared to plot against him. Unfortunately, even with his anger, his special alien purge trait fails to activate. But he still has a trump card up his sleeve. He decides it's time to summon the Myriad Soul banner and unleash the night parade of 100 ghosts. As soon as he makes his move, the difference in power becomes obvious. A thick, suffocating black mist instantly swallows the entire ritual formation. Against a group of cultists who haven't even surpassed the soul-breaking realm, the Myriad Soul banner releases thousands of demonic spirits in a single strike. A single wave of ghostly energy wipes them out entirely. He leaves only one survivor, the cult leader himself, who watches in absolute terror. The leader stares as Chun-Yi stands up completely unharmed from the center of the formation, the banner in his hand billowing with dark, ominous smoke. Looking at the hideous demonic spirits looming behind the young man, the leader realizes that Chun-Yi is far more sinister than any cultist. Talk about a miscalculation. Chun-Yi asks him one more time, do they actually have a way to help someone break through to the golden body realm, or was it all a lie? The leader lets out a mocking sneer, noting that countless geniuses have failed to cross the threshold from the lower realms to the middle stage of cultivation. He asks, quite sarcastically, how a diminished group like the Sacred Fire Cult could possibly possess the power to grant such a breakthrough. Just as Chun-Yi prepares to end the man's life, he notices a tattoo peeking out from the leader's chest, a distinct and familiar flame pattern. We see Chun-Yi pause his attack, reaching into his storage ring to pull out a white mask while asking if the pattern matches the tattoo on the man's chest. He grabs the man firmly, hoisting him up for a closer look. To be honest, the cult leader doesn't look nearly as confident as he did a moment ago. Chun-Yi demands to know if they traveled to the Central Plains 48 years ago to massacre a place called Luoding Village. The leader gives him a strange look, his mouth remaining tightly shut, but we know the Myriad Soul banner has a special way of dealing with the stubborn. One has to wonder if the poor leader has ever experienced true, absolute despair as the black mist from the banner begins to swirl around him. That mist isn't just there to set a dark mood. It begins to crawl into the leader's eyes, nose, and mouth, invading his very senses. The cult leader lets out scream after scream, the sound echoing through the clearing as the spiritual torture takes hold. His features twist in such agony that one might think he's about to ascend to another plane of existence just to escape, and finally, he breaks, sobbing that he will talk. Since the Sacred Fire Cult has already fallen into such a pathetic state, he figures there are no secrets left worth keeping. Surely the Fire God will forgive him. From the leader's trembling lips, Chun-Yi learns the rough outline of the massacre, realizing that the Sacred Fire Cult wasn't actually the mastermind. To put it simply, they were just the hired muscle. They didn't even send their elites to handle a small, distant village in the Central Plains. They merely dispatched a small squad of believers to carry out the task, who then made contact with a local group to finish the job. It was their branch organization in the Central Plains, known as the Crimson Heart Sect, that actually handled the bulk of the operation. When Chun-Yi asks who the mastermind was, the leader claims he doesn't know. Whether he truly doesn't know, or is simply too terrified to speak, is the question. Deep down, Chun-Yi suspects the man is hiding something. He wonders if the leader truly believes he can keep such a secret now. The leader explains the real reason the Sacred Fire Cult declined. It wasn't just bad luck. Their high-level experts and elites didn't just vanish. They were silenced to keep the secret. After all this time in the simulation, a layer of the mystery surrounding the village massacre is finally peeled away. It makes sense now why the Crimson Heart Sect's techniques used so much fire. They were a direct offshoot of the Sacred Fire Cult all along. But the bigger questions remain. Who is silencing the witnesses? And who is the one pulling the cult's strings from the shadows? And most importantly, why target that specific village? Just as we get close to the truth, the trail of clues seems to go cold once again. The mastermind behind the scenes is clearly no ordinary figure, and uncovering their true identity will undoubtedly be a monumental challenge. For now, we continue the simulation, certain that the truth will surface eventually. Leaving the Sacred Fire Cult behind, Chun-Yi travels quite a distance. In the distance, he spots a familiar silhouette standing beneath a tree. It is Junpin, waiting patiently in the shadows. The monk's bald head reflects the moonlight as he chants a prayer, noting that it seems the benefactor has finished settling scores with those heretics. Chun-Yi simply pats the dust from his clothes with a relaxed expression, though he notices his hem is still slightly stained from the encounter. By the 51st year, at the age of 69, he asks Junpin to introduce him to a few more twisted and unorthodox sects. At the 100 Poisons cult, he tastes toxins so agonizing they leave him bedridden for a month, causing his breakthrough to end in failure. Naturally, he wipes out these poison makers afterward. After all, creating such lethal substances to harm others is truly wicked work. Next, he visits the Eternal cult to experience their secret methods, which involve the lovely sensation of parasitic insects entering one's brain. The extreme pain nearly costs him his sanity, and his breakthrough fails again, so he decides to settle accounts with these insect masters as well. During these years, he also studies the Earth grade techniques recorded in the Jade Slip, but his natural comprehension is, to be honest, quite average. With zero progress made, he decides to share the technique with Junpin, hoping that if the monk learns it, he might offer some guidance. Unfortunately, even though Junpin is slightly sharper than him, the monk hasn't even reached the entry level yet, though there's a reason. He suspects the monk's lack of focus stems from the fact that Junpin is constantly preoccupied with filling his stomach. Once again, Chun-Yi leaves a cult battered and bruised. Junpin asks what the point of seeking a breakthrough is at his advanced age, but the specific reasons are a bit too complicated to explain. He simply tells the monk it is a man's promise. In the 52nd year, at age 70, we see him drawing a new trait. The draw is a success. He gains proficiency, a mythical grade trait. From this day forward, he will no longer have any need for natural talent. As long as he repeatedly practices a technique a certain number of times, he will gain the proficiency required to master it. Heaven rewards the diligent, and it is time for our protagonist to start the grind. It's time to get to work, young man. When asked to adjust his traits, he chooses to replace the older, the luckier, with this new proficiency trait. We see Chun-Yi following the martial arts movements from the Jade Slip, gesturing at the air, while Junpin watches his excitement with total confusion. The monk asks if his benefactor's mind has failed again, warning him once more to stop trying those heretical paths, and surprisingly, Chun-Yi agrees. He declares that from this day forward, he is finished with those twisted sects. He intends to focus solely on his martial arts training. Junpin notes that Chun-Yi is a fickle man, changing his ambitions even with one foot in the grave, but our protagonist has finally seen the light. He realizes that even if he can't break through his realm, he can at least use his proficiency trait to max out his technique levels. When he practices for the 99th time, he still hasn't actually learned the technique. He is merely mimicking the movements. However, the moment he hits the 100th repetition, everything suddenly clicks, and he masters the basics. By the 62nd year, he is 80 years old, and here we see him drawing a new trait once again. The draw is a success. He gains immune to 100 poisons, a trait that grants him incredibly high resistance to toxins. Ordinary worldly poisons no longer affect him, and even special toxins, like demonic or technique-based poisons, are significantly weakened. When asked to adjust his traits, he decides to replace quick wit with this new immunity. A wise choice, considering his past experiences. Junpin decides it is time to wander the continent, a goal he set after leaving the secular world, while Chun-Yi needs to find the earth veins. And so, these two unemployed wanderers set off together, traveling across the vast lands of Wuyu as a pair of aimless drifters. Over the next few years, they make their way from Shiliang back to the Central Plains. Along the way, they encounter many members of the demon race. These demons have appeared deep within human territory, attacking travelers, which is strange, as the Central Plains are full of human masters. One wonders why they would allow the demons to cause such chaos. It is only from a traveler named Xiaofu that Chun-Yi learns the truth. The demon race, led by the four great clans like the Azure Dragon, has launched a full-scale war against humanity. The humans have halted their internal civil wars, forming a united front led by the Wuji Sword Sect, the Central Dynasty, and the Southern Empress. Even the Northern Plains warriors have joined the fight, and both sides are now locked in a tense standoff at the boundary of Sangqiong Ridge. Before the formal declaration of war, while humanity was still divided, the demon race had already sent out an elite force to infiltrate the land. These elite forces secretly infiltrated the heart of the Central Plains, gathering scattered demon tribes from across the region to bolster their ranks. They have been slaughtering commoners everywhere, which explains the constant demon sightings we've encountered along our journey. Eventually, Chun-Yi realizes he can't carry anymore. He has slain so many demons that his soul storage is completely overflowing. He and Jinpin arrive at God Weapon City to upgrade his myriad soul banner, but the shopkeeper rudely kicks them out for being broke. The man tells them not to interfere with business, as earth-rank spiritual tools are incredibly expensive, and so, another attempt at bargaining fails. Just as he is feeling dejected, a young man approaches from behind and offers to pay the full amount for him. The stranger notes that these spirit stones should be more than enough to forge several earth-rank spiritual weapons. It is the sword master, who greets Chun-Yi as the bane of demons, expressing relief to see the old man is still in good health. Chun-Yi asks why he isn't at the front lines of the Great War, to which the sword master replies that battles aren't fought every single day. Both sides need a chance to breathe, so he took the opportunity to leave and specifically seek out our protagonist. Chun-Yi wonders what he could have done to deserve such attention, jokingly asking if this is just a high-interest loan in disguise. The sword master laughs, explaining the stones are a gift. Having a proper weapon will be vital for the favor he is about to ask. As they speak further, it becomes clear the sword master wants Chun-Yi to lead an army to suppress the demon uprisings within the 5 regions. He is referring to those demon elites who sneaked in before the war began, a serious threat, to be sure. Since the human powerhouses are all occupied at Sangqiong Ridge, the interior of the land is vulnerable, and that is where Chun-Yi comes in. As the bane of demons, he is the perfect candidate to take command and restore peace to the troubled territories. Now he faces a choice. He could follow the example of ancient generals and head to war even at the age of 80. Or he could decide that at his age, he's had enough of killing and simply wants to enjoy his final years in peace. Alternatively, he could express his desire to fight while admitting his strength is lacking, asking the swordmaster for a way to break through his realm. After all, for a great swordmaster to travel so far to find him, the safety of the common people must truly be at stake. Chun-Yi thinks to himself that refusing such a noble cause would be inhuman, so he chooses the third path as the simulation continues. He tells the swordmaster that, to be perfectly honest, seeing the common people suffer at the hands of demons breaks his heart. However, he laments that as a mere soul-shattering realm cultivator, his strength is insufficient for such a heavy responsibility, while Jinpin sighs in support. The monk puts on a truly pained expression. After all, Chun-Yi has been stuck at this level for a very long time. Breaking through with low-grade latent talent is nearly impossible without immense luck, and he notes that even in the Wuji Sword Sect, he'd have no chance. The swordmaster gives a light chuckle and suggests that, perhaps, it isn't quite as impossible as Chun-Yi thinks. Chun-Yi can barely suppress a grin as he asks for clarification, while the swordmaster reaches into his storage belt. He produces a shimmering, radiant peach, the legendary Sword Heart Immortal Peach, harvested from the divine Sword Heart tree itself. This rare fruit takes 300 years to sprout, 300 to flower, and another 300 just to bear fruit. Only a single peach grows at a time, and using such a treasure just to reach the spirit realm is, frankly, a bit of a waste. Under the swordmaster's encouraging gaze, Chun-Yi eats the peach and feels the power surging through him immediately. The bottleneck that had frustrated him for decades finally loosens, and his internal spiritual energy begins to circulate on its own. He breaks through to the spirit realm right then and there, but the swordmaster cannot stay long. He must return to the front lines. That same day, atop the towers of God Weapon City, the swordmaster formally announces Chun-Yi's new title as the Grand Marshal of Demon Slaying. With the announcement made and the leadership settled, the swordmaster departs to return to the heights of Sangqiong. Half a month later, the Spirit Refining Pavilion delivers the Earth-rank Myriad Soul Banner and, surprisingly, returns all the spirit stones the swordmaster paid. Chun-Yi wonders aloud how he could possibly accept such a gesture, even as he smoothly tucks the stones back into his storage ring. Deciding not to be overly polite, he has the pavilion build a massive warship to transport his growing army. Over the following days, many warriors and locals flock to join him in his quest to purge the 5 regions of the demon threat. Finally, the day of the expedition arrives, and we see him leading 100 ships and 100,000 warriors to begin the Great Purge. This is the first stop of the expedition, where we see Chun-Yi leading his massive army to meet the demon elites at Yellow Sand Ridge. As both sides draw up their battle formations for a fierce clash, an old acquaintance suddenly appears on the opposite side. The soldiers whisper that this demon kills without blinking, a truly terrifying foe for any ordinary man. And yet, to a spirit realm master, a mere golden body stage opponent is something he could crush with a single finger. The troops marvel at the old marshal's strength, which makes sense, considering he was personally recommended by the swordmaster. They aren't joking around, though some wonder about that banner he carries. It looks suspiciously like the Myriad Soul Banner. His subordinates quickly tell the doubters to open their eyes, as the simulation moves forward to the 65th year. At 83 years old, Chun-Yi leads the demon-slaying army from the deck of his cloud-top warship, a sight to behold. Because of his advanced age, many of the younger soldiers have taken to calling him Grandpa directly. He finds that having a sudden crowd of grandsons isn't a bad feeling at all as we reach the 66th year. The army advances triumphantly, sending the demons of the 5 regions fleeing in terror until, backed into a corner, the monsters finally retaliate. During a desperate battle to reinforce Jizhou, the monk Jinpin moves to save a group of commoners. He is ambushed by several spirit-level demons and, unfortunately, finds he cannot hold on much longer. Chun-Yi begs the old monk to stay strong, promising that the medicine from Danxiang Valley is on its way. Jinpin simply smiles, telling the marshal not to grieve as he is merely going to meet the Buddha, a good thing, in his eyes. With a peaceful expression and hands pressed together, he departs to find his faith, and on that day, the army witnesses true fury. Their old marshal, bare-chested and alone, charges into the swarm of demons attacking Jizhou City like a man possessed. He tears through everything in his path, but after Jinpin's death, Chun-Yi becomes quiet, feeling a familiar, hollow void. It is the growing sensation that his own end is approaching. Meanwhile, a scout reports that the demons attacked the Yuanyang vein 3 days ago. After years of constant warfare, he realizes with some concern that the demons have actually begun to learn the art of strategy. The demons no longer charge blindly as they once did. Instead, they target temporary mineral veins to cut off the frontline supplies, using actual military tactics. But if they can use strategy, so can we, and Chun-Yi is slightly better at it. Using 3 goldstone veins as bait to lure them into a trap. After a series of feigned retreats, we finally meet the mastermind behind the demon tactics, and surprisingly, it is another old acquaintance, Feng Yuqing. To be honest, seeing him defect to the demon side isn't surprising at all, given his history. Feng Yuqing laughs, remarking that he never expected the famous Grand Marshal of the demon-slaying army to remember him. He mocks his own status as a nobody before turning to his companion, General Wang Ping, asking him to gauge the marshal's cultivation level. Wang Ping is one of the generals under Feng's command, possessing the spirit concentration realm, which grants him the use of divine sense. He observes carefully, noting that the target seems to be at the third stage of the golden body realm after all this time. He confirms the third stage of the golden body realm, noting with a smirk that the marshal has been busy along the way. Feng notes that the marshal is 2 stages higher than himself, but Chun-Yi initially has no intention of attacking Feng Yuqing personally, as Feng is still human. Since his alien race nemesis trait won't trigger against a human, and despite his high combat power, he sees no reason to take an unnecessary risk. That is what subordinates are for. After all, amidst the chaos, Wang Ping strictly follows orders and tracks Feng Yuqing down. He relentlessly pursues him until, backed into a corner, Feng Yuqing undergoes a transformation, sprouting a pair of fleshy wings from his back. Black scales begin to cover his entire body, giving him a truly wretched and monstrous appearance. With his power surging after the transformation, Feng Yuqing joins a group of spirit-level demons and begins to push Wang Ping and the other generals back. Seeing them in retreat, Chun-Yi simply smiles, wondering aloud why someone would choose to be a monster instead of a man. Since he made that choice, he can't blame the marshal for having a heavy fist as Chun-Yi charges directly into the battlefield. He sweeps through the opposition with a force that could swallow mountains, and by the end of the clash, the demon elites are completely wiped out. Defeated and desperate, Feng Yuqing begs Chun-Yi to spare his life, promising he will never return to the 5 regions again. He calls it a nightmare, asking what he could have possibly done wrong in this world to deserve such a fate. He claims he only wanted to grow stronger, asking if Chun-Yi, who also started with low-tier talent, couldn't understand. Chun-Yi's only response is a cold dismissal. As Chun-Yi raises his sword, Feng Yuqing turns to flee, only to have his tail severed by a single strike, leaving him stumbling to the ground. Desperate and broken, he begs for mercy, crying out that he was wrong and pleading for his life to be spared. Chun-Yi tells him to offer his repentance in the underworld, preparing to deliver the final blow to end Feng Yuqing's life once and for all. Suddenly, his danger sense flares up, warning of a threat from behind. He shifts his body just as the severed tail from moments ago lunges back. The tail grazes his shoulder as it flies past, and Feng Yuqing sneers, declaring that Chun-Yi is finally finished. He claims victory in this round, revealing with a twisted smile that his severed tail was laced with a lethal poison. It was his ultimate trump card, and all his previous begging was merely a performance to lure Chun-Yi into a trap. A classic villain move, really. He boasts that this is his destiny, that by seizing every opportunity and discarding his humanity, he finally obtained true power. Feng Yuqing basks in the joy of his perceived victory, gloating and showing off his monstrous strength while laughing at his opponent's fate. After 2 full minutes of gloating, he suddenly realizes something is wrong, stammering in disbelief as to why Chun-Yi hasn't collapsed yet. The response is a cold flash of sword light. Chun-Yi remarks that after everything he has faced, a little poison like this is hardly a concern. Once the battle concludes, a heavy exhaustion settles over him, as his remaining lifespan is finally reaching its end. He turns to ask the spirit a question. He asks for the exact location and date of where the spirit was before they met, requesting as much precision as possible. The spirit replies that it's hard to remember things so clearly, especially the exact hour of the day from so long ago. It mentions wandering around Hanyuan County, and we see Chun-Yi listening intently as the spirit searches through its fragmented memories. Using his photographic memory, he carves these details into his mind, even as he feels the very last of his strength being drained away. His eyelids grow heavy, and he realizes it is time to go. Just as he is about to close his eyes for the last time, he sees a blur. In his final moments of consciousness, he catches sight of a familiar figure rushing toward him with a look of deep regret. He hears a voice calling him uncle and asking him to wake up. It is Siqing. He wonders, in a daze, why she is here. She explains that her master sent her, and when Chun-Yi asks who that might be, she reveals the name, the Empress of the Southern Border, Li Linghua. He asks how her master is doing, but the hesitation in Siqing's voice tells him everything he needs to know before she even speaks. She is dead. The news hits him hard. After all, how could an empress, someone so powerful, simply be gone? He wonders how such strength could fail, and so Siqing begins to tell him about the brutal warriors over at Firmament Ridge. It wasn't just the empress. Even the sword master, known as the strongest of the 5 Jades, perished after exhausting his life force to slay 3 entire groups. We learn that the war is far from over. The top-tier powers have wiped each other out, leaving a void that the world is struggling to fill. First the high-ranking leaders fell, then the middle ranks, and now the common soldiers are being ground away with no end in sight. There are no winners in this war. Siqing calls him uncle once more and hands him a letter her master intended for her dear Chun. The letter says she doesn't need to hide her heart from him anymore, mentioning a plan she and the sword master have set for tomorrow. Everything depends on whether they can take the city, yet she admits to having a dark premonition about what is to come. She wrote this hoping Siqing would find him, thanking the sword master for finally revealing who Chun-Yi had become in this life. After searching for him for half a lifetime, she had finally found where he was, a bittersweet victory, to be sure. Through the letter, we see the journey of Li Linghua's life, fleeing a marriage, surviving a fall from a cliff, and her eventual rise to power. She unified the south, fought back into the central plains, and stood with the sword master against the demon race until the very end. In a daze, Chun-Yi sees her peerless face again, dressed in her majestic robes and crown, reuniting with him amidst a brilliant, overflowing light. She tells him she has lived and fought, and though her work wasn't finished, her heart was at peace. With that, Chun-Yi takes his final breath. The last sound he hears in this life is the cry of the demon-slaying soldiers outside the military tent, calling out for their marshal. And so, the simulation comes to an end. Now, we wait for the final evaluation of his journey.
Master.